Hey, happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us along with an empty chair. I am Ari Temkin. No James Westlake today. Taven Turner producing today's show. T. Chains is with us as always. Anthony Smith back at our Raycom Big 12 studios. Busy Friday, a lot to get to with plenty of noise surrounding the transfer portal and whether or not it actually makes more sense for many of these guys to stay in school versus going pro, which is sort of an incredible dynamic that you wonder if at some point leagues will adjust to, because the emphasis right now, it seems, is to not go because it's more lucrative not to. And we'll hear what Danny Hurley had to say on the subject coming up, which is a really interesting wrinkle to many of the conversations being had right now across the college landscape when it comes to the portal and the sport, and many texts that I received from friends, and on and on and on. If you missed Brent Brennan, Arizona's football coach, who was on with us yesterday, you can hear that interview coming up in about 15 minutes from now. You're not going to want to miss Brent Brennan on the heels of a hugely impactful season after a 9-win campaign for Arizona in Brent Brennan's second year. We also continue our full court review, Modelo's Big 12 basketball team recaps with the 13-seeded Baylor Bears today. John Morris, our good friend from the university, from Baylor University, who's the play-by-play announcer, joins us coming up in the second hour of today's show. But yesterday was the start of the Masters, a iconic golf tournament, a major. Taman, you into golf at all?
I'm not a big golf guy, but I will just say this story that you're about to bring up really touched me.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think there's a lot to like and even to love about the Masters because it's still a throwback in a world of modern sports and modern athletics where there's so much fanfare and money and promise and on and on and on. I mean, the Masters is like, you can't bring your phone into Augusta National. I mean, think about that. Think about if there were any stadiums across the country where you could not bring your phone inside. I would love it. I know lots of people would be outraged by it, but it feels like you go to a concert now and like, it shouldn't bug me, but it does, that there's people beside me that are just filming the entire thing. Like, just be present for a moment at the show. And then, like, the other part of that is, like, are you really going to go back and watch the entire thing? No.
It's just for social media to say they're there.
Yeah, but I will literally see people filming the entire thing.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to, like, put this online? I don't know. So, like, and you see people that are, like, being filmed outside of the gates at Augusta National that are all upset about the fact that they have to put their phones away or put them in the locker. It's like, I love it. Like, I can't put my phone down. I try it sometimes to, like, leave my phone in a different room. But I love being forced to not have my phone.
I saw a tweet from Brad Townsend of the Dallas Morning News, and he said he's covered many events, NBA Finals, Super Bowls. He said there is no event to cover like the Masters.
Right.
It's
Truly.
a unique event of its own.
Well, and, like, amazingly, too, like Costco, they haven't really raised the prices of any of, like, the clothing you could buy or the food. It's all still relatively inexpensive. It's just getting there is the difficulty.
Yeah.
But there's some really big-time Big 12 storylines with the Masters going on right now. The first round was yesterday. And we look at the leaderboard, it's a who's who of big-time names. But, I mean, I think there is definitely somebody that you need to be paying attention to and probably rooting for from a Big 12 perspective. So let's just start with, there are 6 Oklahoma State golfers participating in the Masters, including a current student. So Ethan Fang is a current Oklahoma State golfer. He's playing in the Masters after earning a spot with the national championship in golf last year. And he highlights one of 6 former Oklahoma State Cowboys to make it the single most represented program in the field. It's actually an insane story. Oklahoma State has 6. The ACC has 4. The Big Ten has 4. So Oklahoma State by itself has more individually than the Atlantic Coast Conference does collectively and more than the Big Ten Conference does collectively. I mean, we know, if you follow golf and college golf at all, and if you're a fan of the Big 12, you should know that Oklahoma State is a dominant program. They've just had an insane amount of big-time golfers come through, and, you know, and 6 in the Masters is insane. If you're looking at the current leaderboard, just to get you updated after day one, Wyndham Clark, these are all the Oklahoma State alums playing in this tournament, is even, tied for 18th. Victor Hovland, who may be the biggest name from Oklahoma State participating, is +3, tied for 49th. Certainly the most accomplished of any of these Oklahoma State golfers. Alex Noren is +5, tied for 67th. And then there's Neergaard Peterson, who is +5, also tied for 67th. And then Sam Stevens, tied for 18th at even par. And how about Ethan Fang, the current student, the amateur, playing in this, or amateur as they say. Fang won the amateur championship last summer, and that's why he gets to compete in both the Masters and the U.S. Open. He's the first American, amazingly, to win the amateur championship in 18 years, and the first Cowboy to do so since 1967. But Fang finished the first day +2, tied for 42nd. So at this point, he appears to be above the cut line. We'll see where it ends up being. But really an incredible story to follow, with Fang being a huge piece to the college golf game this year. And you can watch him as an amateur competing against the best of the world in the Masters. But the top golfer from the Big 12 at the top of the leaderboard right now, and if you look at, there's two guys that you'll know that went to Texas that did actually compete in the Big 12, which would be Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth. Yeah, I don't know if you credit them to the SEC or to the Big 12, but they literally competed in the Big 12. So I'll at least give them some kind of semblance or count towards the Big 12. But the one guy that's higher than any of these other Oklahoma State golfers right now is Gary Woodland from the University of Kansas, who James knows from growing up in Topeka, which is where Gary grew up. Gary currently -2, tied for 7th. He's 3 off the lead right now after the first day. And we talked a little bit about Gary Woodland after he won the Shell Houston Open, or it's not Shell anymore, it's just the Houston Open, a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, he's got one of the most incredible stories going on right now. And that's because, so he won the U.S. Open in 2021 and then did not win another golf event until he won the Houston Open a few weeks ago. He went basically 6 years without winning a golf tournament. And in the interim, had a brain tumor removed and has basically been dealing with some pretty significant PTSD following the removal of that brain tumor. And, at first, from my perspective, you hear about this, you're thinking, I always knew PTSD was associated with, military, with war, even with, assault, having something happen against you that makes you fearful of it happening again. And obviously in military. Did not know that there was actually something with this, especially from a post-surgery standpoint. And basically, Gary Woodland having a brain tumor, his body had to rewire itself for survival. And after he had the tumor removed and everything was fine, his rewired brain and body didn't really rewire back. And that's basically what he's been dealing with. And that's probably about as quick as I could summarize it. But here, take a listen. Here's Gary Woodland. This is going to be clip 1. This is what he said after winning the Houston Open just a couple of weeks ago.
Tell you what, we play an individual sport out here, but I wasn't alone today. And I got a lot of people behind me, my team, my family, in this golf world. Anybody that's struggling with something, I hope they see me and don't give up. Just keep fighting.
So there's a very emotional Woodland after winning the Houston Open. It was his first PGA Tour win since winning the U.S. Open back in 2021. And, I'm sure there might have been people listening to this sort of confused again about the situation. He had the brain tumor removed in August of 2023, and basically since then he came back, but has been dealing with some post-traumatic stress disorders symptoms. Here's what he told Rex Hoggard a few weeks before winning the Houston Open on March 9th on the Golf Channel.
I'm in a different spot than I've been in a long time. Even in coming back in 24, I was still fresh from surgery. I just didn't know what the future held. And now I know the fight I'm in. I'm not going to get emotional, but I know what I'm battling every day. And, people have asked me how was the win. The one thing I know is having this brain tumor and having PTSD, it doesn't matter if I win or lose. It doesn't care. And I had a tough week last week battling this stuff. It's a lot of stimulation comes with winning, stuff that I hadn't seen in a long time. And it's a big week for me here this week. The fans are very close on the tee boxes. There's a lot going on, and there's probably not a safer golf tournament in the world, and so I'm happy for that. But it's still a battle in my head if I'm safe or not, and that's a tough pill to swallow. So I'm emotional from the standpoint. I know how close I probably was to never being back here, and I'm very proud of myself for earning my way back.
All right, so let me try to explain this, I guess, as simply as I can, because it's also hard for me to understand. Because, again, we associate, PTSD with surviving military combat or assault, sexual assault, right? Like, that's what we think about. But it's also been linked to surviving life-threatening medical events like he dealt with, and it's sometimes referred to as post-surgical PTSD. It's not rare, but it's rarely talked about, I think, because of probably the stigma associated with it. And I think from the outside listening to that, you're like, what do you mean? You are safe. Like, nobody's going to harm you. But that's one thing for us to say that. It's another thing for him to be dealing with those symptoms with his brain. And, I mean, the way the brain rewires itself around a trauma and then refuses to let go, they told him something he needed to hear. You cannot do this alone, no matter how strong you believe yourself to be. And that's ultimately why he's speaking out against this. So basically, he talks about being hyper-vigilant. Like, he talked about there was a Ryder Cup event that he was at, and, kind of like a walking scorekeeper got a little bit too close to him, and so he was fearful that person was going to kill him. And, so, like, it's that sort of stuff that's led to him having really bad outings and thinking about, never playing golf again. Again, we might, on the outside, look like you're fine, but from him and his standpoint, like, mentally, he's constantly dealing with what he thinks are life-threatening issues because he was at one point in survival mode, and his brain has not rewired itself back, and that's what he's fighting against right now. So, the big story here is that he came out and spoke publicly about it, which I'm sure was extremely difficult to do because you're going to deal with public ridicule. There are a lot of people that won't understand this. Like, again, I was trying to go deep into this and be like, I don't understand it. I can't comprehend this. You're fine. You're at a golf tournament. Like, no, nobody's going to harm you. There's security. But yet, like, mentally, he's going through something completely different. He's fighting a completely different battle than anybody, a lot of people can comprehend, unless you have those same tics and symptoms yourself. And ultimately, he's got his own security detail. There's additional PGA security that's like just meant, like, even though, again, he's probably fine, there's probably nobody trying to kill him, rationally speaking, that's not what his brain is going through. And so he looks back and he sees PGA Tour security. He feels better. He feels significantly better. He can play better. And that's what's been happening. I mean, he won the Houston Open a couple of weeks ago. He's 2 under right now, 3 off the lead at the Masters after one day. It's really an incredible story. And you think about, like, having a brain tumor removed, that's just one part of it. It's what he's been dealing with post that, and being a high-level professional athlete, it adds to that in a completely different way. And I think what he now views himself as he tries to overcome this and deal with it and manage it and get better, is trying to influence and help others.
Yeah, I told you from the beginning, Ari, that this story kind of touched me because even though I've never had a brain tumor, I have had a issue with my brain. And from a neurological standpoint, when I had a grand mal seizure, December 22nd, 2021 was the scariest day of my life. I woke up in an ambulance, and I can make the argument that the seizure was the easy part. It was the afterhand. I couldn't drive for 90 days. I didn't know what work was going to be like. When I got diagnosed with epilepsy, which I have, I read stories about how some people don't recover from this. It can become a everyday type of thing. And so I'm sitting at home. I'm not working. We're still during COVID at the time. My brain is like, when am I coming back? I'm now being put on a medicine that I have to use every day. And I'm like to myself, what's my future look like? I'm thinking about my wife. I'm thinking about my kids. And even though, like, it's not a brain tumor, but I get the mental aspect of it. You start questioning everything you've ever done, and you wonder what the future is going to bring. So for Gary Woodland, I mean, to have a tumor to that extent and to have surgery on your brain. I didn't have surgery on my brain. I've had tests and scans.
Yeah, but I'm sure, too, you're also fearful of, when is it going to happen again? Can it happen again? Will it happen again? And I don't know when it's going to happen. What are the symptoms? What should I be looking for?
I'll give you an example from myself. I was afraid to go swimming because I didn't want to have a seizure in the pool.
Yeah.
And I was against it. I have since gone back into the water, but I didn't go probably the entire summer.
Totally understandable.
Yeah, I was nervous about it. And
I imagine you'd be nervous about driving. Same thing. Like, what happens if you have a seizure while driving?
Right.
You crash your car.
Right. And that has happened. And I've followed my doctor's orders. Like I said, the seizure was the easy part. And I'm sure for Mr. Woodland here, the tumor, in a weird way, was the easy part.
Yeah.
It is the aftermath that is the hardest part of trying to get back on your feet.
Well, and I think, the big part to this, and this is ultimately the point that Gary's making, and I think at large, it's like, the world we live in, and for a guy like Gary, who's a pro athlete, this is viewed as a weakness. And people are going to hear him and be like, what? This sounds like, just get over it, dude. There is still very much this, element. And look, this is something that in the military, the stigma of PTSD for a long time, people were dealing with. Like, you're military. You're supposed to be strong and not have to deal with this stuff. And it isn't a weakness, but it is, in many eyes, viewed as a weakness. And, what Gary's point was, he said, quote, I've turned a weakness into a strength. I wouldn't even call it a weakness, but I think that's the stigma out there. I mean, there's a lot of strength in that. And again, to watch this guy compete at this level, yet we all know what he's dealing with very openly, and I'm sure people are still critical of him for it. And I'm sure the same way, Taman, that was hard for you to kind of publicly or to friends socially talk about these things. Why don't you want to get in the pool, Taman? What's wrong? Why don't you? We should hang out. You should come to my house. Why don't you drive over here? I don't want to.
Yeah,
why not?
Scared.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. And it's okay to be scared or nervous or have anxiety over something. When you're dealing with, this is a medical issue that I had to deal with, Gary Woodland had to deal with, and it takes time to come back from. It just does.
Yeah. Well, and again, just how people will view it, the stigma of it, and dealing with that, especially when you're a public, high-profile athlete, there's got to be a lot with it. And so he was suffering in silence for a long time, and his career was bottoming out because of it. It's really an incredible story. And there's multiple incredible stories at the Masters this week from a Big 12 perspective. Woodland and Ed Fang, the amateur Oklahoma State student, who's at this point, at +2 after one round. We'll see how he shoots today, but pretty incredible. And then, of course, Gary coming out on the heels of winning the Houston Open just a couple of weeks ago. He's now at 2 under on a very, very high-profile leaderboard right now. So we'll see what happens day 2 here from Augusta when they tee things off later on this morning and into the afternoon. Just a really incredible story. All right, we've got a lot to do today, including what Danny Hurley said on the Dan Patrick Show about leaving college too early, and now how you can look at what is out there from an NIL perspective versus what you can get at the NFL and the NBA, and will there be adjustments by those leagues to counterbalance some of the financial discrepancies that exist right now? And, will there be more financial decisions made that greatly influence decisions? All of that coming up because it's really interesting. Also, our full court review, Modelo's Big 12 basketball team recaps on Baylor. That's coming up. On the way next, though, we'll hear from Brent Brennan, the Arizona football coach. Brent Brennan joined us on yesterday's show. If you missed it, you'll hear it next. You're not going to want to miss Brent Brennan talk about Noah Fafita, expectations for this season. That's next. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Shoulder fade. Was that caught? It was! Caleb Douglas. Look at what he found. Horton the other way. Pass corralled by Douglas. A first down and another big play. There goes Douglas. Inside the 25. He's been a big play
second down throw to the end zone. Douglas. Touchdown, Texas Tech. What a drive.
Morton long throw to the sideline, and the catch is made. And another missed tackle, and Douglas is free inside the 20 and inside the 15. 14 touches, almost 90 yards. Back shoulder fade. Was that caught? It was! Caleb Douglas. Look at what he found.
Baron Morton wants another touchdown for the road, and he's got it for Douglas, who finds his own camera on a touchdown.
Back here on Big 12 Radio, this is Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. We are presented by Modelo, and we are excited right now to be joined by the head football coach for the Arizona Wildcats, Brent Brennan, joining us here on Big 12 Radio. Coach, how are you? How's your spring going?
Oh, it's going great, man. Obviously, it's been an exciting time around here with the run our, Tommy Lloyd and our men's basketball team made to the Final Four last weekend. So that's been really exciting. And then for us on the football side, we've got a great offseason and we're 7 days into spring practice. So we're just kind of attacking it every day. A lot of fun, a lot of new faces. It's been great.
Yeah, how close do you and Tommy work, knowing both of you a little bit? You're both, very similar, genuine guys. I'm sure you're always looking for an edge in some way. So how have you helped Tommy? How does Tommy help you?
Well, I think Tommy's been great to me. You know what I mean? I think that's one of those things that I think is really cool. I think, football and basketball, working together, representing the university on a high level. Just really, he's a great university guy. He's a great leader for our athletic department. He's also a real Tucson guy. So I just think that part of it is really, really cool. I'm, in a lot of similar ways. I love being here. I love the U of A. I love Tucson. So we're having a great time together. He's a really good dude. We have a lot of fun together, and we do as much as we can to support each other's teams.
Are you also a Beastie Boys guy?
Of course, man. You can't be. I don't think you can be my age and not be a Beastie Boys guy. There's something wrong with you if you don't.
What's your favorite Beastie song?
Oh, that's a good question. Gosh, Rhyming and Stealing, I think.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a deep track too. That's a good one.
I think that would be it.
Yeah. All right. So 4-8 year one, 9-4 year two. So a dramatic turnaround. What changed? What was different? And maybe time was the greatest differentiator.
Yeah, I think, we were just able to settle in a little bit with the job. I think we definitely, when we got hired here, everything was moving fast and furious. Retention of players, non-retention, transfer portal, the portal created by Jed, then the post-spring ball portal, and kind of fighting through that uneasy time. I've said it a bunch, over the last year. I think that first year we were just begging everybody to stay. And I just think it was a bad kind of foundation to build a football program on. And really, when we came out of that first season, we just boiled it down to we want guys that love the U of A, that love football, and who want to be here. And that was a good starting point for us with last year's team.
Well, one of those guys is Noah Fafita, coming off a great season, and it's maybe surprising for some to find out that this is going to be just the first time in his college career to have the same offensive coordinator in back-to-back years. What stands out to you about Noah?
Oh, shit, there's so many things. This young man is special in every way, and I think we're incredibly fortunate at the U of A to have a Heisman caliber candidate returning a quarterback with this team. He's been raised by incredible people. His parents, Les and Winona, are just outstanding. Now we have his little brother playing linebacker for us, and he's a stud. But Noah's one of those guys who shows up every day for everybody else. He's incredibly unselfish. He doesn't ask for anything in return. He loves to be coached. He loves to learn. He's not afraid to lead. He's not afraid. He's incredible in the community. I mean, I don't know how many first-team all-conference quarterbacks are still coaching the same, next-level flag football team they started coaching when they were a freshman, but Noah does.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And he wins it every year. He wins the whole thing every year. It's so funny. It doesn't surprise any of us that know him, but he's an outstanding human being. I love him. I'm so glad he's an Arizona Wildcat, and we're so fortunate that he continues to choose Tucson, continues to choose U of A, continues to choose this program and this team.
Has he been like to you, like, hey, we run some of this stuff at the flag football level, like maybe we should implement it here? Has he tried to get you to run some of his plays?
No, he's not like that. But it is really fun. I think when you have a mature player like Noah, the conversations between him and our coaching staff are really high level, and that's a lot of fun. And I think it's also a great example for our other quarterbacks in the room, because they can sit there and look at him, and they all want to be all conference. They all want to be play on the level of consistency that Noah is. And so it's great having him in there to show them how to prepare, how to learn, how to be coached, how to attack practice, how to attack the off season. That he is really special.
You guys played a brand of football that wins in the Big 12. You were physical, you ran the ball well, and you defended, especially in the secondary. And I'll ask you about that coming up. But starting a new season, how do you sort of reestablish that physical presence and identity?
Well, I think it speaks to, just, how hard we attack the off season. I think your toughness is built in the weight room. And I know Coach Carroll and that strength staff does an incredible job building that. And our players have been fantastic attacking that part of it. And then does it translate into spring practice and how much physicality can we get in spring practice while still protecting our team and making good choices about who's out there. But, that's one of those things that's kind of an everyday choice for us, how we structure practice, what's going to be physical, what's going to be teach, what's going to be full speed, all those things. And so far we're off to a great start that way. Obviously we have a lot of good players that we need to replace, but we've also got a core of good players who have an understanding what red line looks like and what the standard is here.
Yeah. Have you taken and fielded calls from NFL executives about Dalton Johnson and Genesis Smith and Trey Dance Dukes?
Sure. Like tons and tons and tons. I mean, we're so excited about those guys and just kind of how they performed at the combine. I'm one of those guys that believes that their film in the Big 12 speaks for itself. Their film over their careers speaks for itself. They are so productive and they are such great dudes. And, that part of it is really, really neat. And I know those guys all did a great job at the combine. They did a great job with their interviews. They've done a great job, at the pro day here. So I think we're going to be really excited. We're going to be really excited for them, and they're going to be really excited on draft day.
Yeah, the eye in the sky does not lie, they say. So it's probably a good idea to be looking at that film. I mean, your secondary, to me, was the backbone of the success of the team last year because of not just how physical they were, but also their ability to generate turnovers. They were relentless. How do you get that again with a new group?
No, absolutely. We got a lot of guys we need to get up to speed there. But we feel great about some of the pieces that we've added. And I think, I have faith in Coach Viney. I have faith in Coach RC. And then, just overall schematically, I know Danny G is going to put us in a good spot to play good defense. And so the players believe in it. And, as long as our effort is there and we have a great understanding of what we're trying to do schematically, I think we'll be able to execute at a high level.
Is there a specific profile you're looking for at corner specifically or in your secondary?
I mean, I would like to say if you're a Top Gun fan, it's classified. I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. No, but no.
I mean, I think I could guess some of the profile, right? I mean, you're looking for long, lanky corners.
But I think the corners that we played with last year, both of them were 5'11" dudes, right? True. But they can run and they're physical and they're not afraid to tackle. And I think that's we're also excited to see what Michael Dansby does on the next level because at the end of the year he was playing fantastic football at corner. And then we have we're excited that Javion Cole is returning. So there's a lot of good stuff there. With like what those guys did a year ago, but also what they showed the younger players that were in the program, how to go about their business and how to execute at a high level, how to communicate there in the back end, which is so, so important. And Dalton and Stukes and Genesis were tremendous at that. I mean, absolutely incredible with their on the field communication. And that was something that, even people that were new to us on the staff, that they went through a walkthrough, on the morning of a game day or a recruit that was on an official visit. And the communication in that walkthrough, on game day, like the coaches that have been there, recruits, their parents, they were blown away by just the level of communication, how assertive and quick and efficient it was. And I think that's one of the reasons that we really played good football.
How important is it to hit the portal with a plan? We've been talking a ton about that, and obviously it's front and center now for basketball, but I don't think it's any different than football in terms of, not just being somebody that collects good players or measurables, but has a specific plan in mind with the types of players they're looking for.
Well, I think the interesting part about that is it changes so much every year, right? Because you get to the end of the season and you don't really know what's coming back, like who's going to leave, who's going to stay, right? You hope they all stay. And we've been really, really, really fortunate that way with most of our high level players choosing to stay. And so we feel good about that, but it is challenging because it is different. And, my hope is here at the University of Arizona that we can continue to use the portal to like fit in holes that we feel like we need help at. I really hope that we can be a program. When we were just talking about Stukes and Dalton and Genesis, right? Those guys are all 3, 5, and 6 year players, that even though they weren't always in the same system, they were in the same place, and their social circle didn't change. They had some coaching changes, sure, but they also had a great understanding of what college football is. And I think, the portal stuff, the thing that's good and bad about it is, yes, this might be an opportunity for a young man to make some more money, which I totally support and agree with. But at the same time, there's a trade-off there. And they might lose a little bit of the continuity. They might lose a social environment that was healthy for them. They might lose a team, culture that was really, really positive for their development. They just don't, they don't know if they keep, changing universities. So, like my hope is that as we look at the portal and as we continue to build this program at the U of A, is that we can have high school kids that grow and develop in our program, in our culture with this team. And that gives us, a foundation of good players that's ready to play the kind of football we want to play.
Speaking of the portal, I love what you guys did when we ranked the best portal additions by position. Arizona routinely showed up. And to me, it's a good balance of guys that have produced at this level. Malcolm Hartzog, a Nebraska guy that's produced the Big Ten. He's had some injury issues, but when he's been on the field, he's been very productive. Cole Rusk, another guy. But then you also, you weren't shy about going into the group of 5 with Cam Chappa and Tyrese Boss. So I'm hoping you could just shed some light on, again, some of these guys that you brought in and are now participating in spring.
It's interesting. I think the portal thing is so unique because the courtship is very, very short, right? It is
speed dating.
Yeah, it really is. You get to know a kid. He comes on a 24-hour visit. And for us and our staff and our players, it's really, how does it feel with having those guys around? How do they feel? How do they vibe with our team? How do they vibe with our coaching staff? What's the interaction like between me and them and their family? What's that interaction like with our coaches when they talk football? Like, those are all the things that we're trying to assess in terms of the fit. And if it's a good fit, we don't care where they came from. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. There's good football players everywhere. Just look on any NFL roster. They're from all over, every school, every level. You know what I mean? So we're just trying to find the guys that are the best fits for Arizona football, the best fits for our culture, the best fits for our team.
Weekend, as you mentioned at the start, in spring football, have you evolved over the years and you're thinking about how to handle spring football, and what do you look to get out of spring football?
I think everybody is evolving, in this profession, especially with the way the rules and everything is changed so much, since I became a head coach, 9 years ago. I think looking at spring practice, I think there's different considerations because the reality is you do have a significant investment on the field practicing. And so I do think you need to be smart about what you do. But you also need to get good at football. You need to get good schematically. Everybody needs technical development. And so there is a lot goes into that, a lot of conversation with your strength staff, your training staff, your coaching staff. Hey, how do we best use this time to get our team ready to play the kind of football we want to play? And it is tricky. It's not an easy answer. I don't think there's no cookie cutter way to do it. You know what I mean? But I feel like we've had great work. We're halfway through spring practice. Our players are attacking the work. We're having fun out there. We're getting after each other. It's been a lot of fun. So I'm optimistic. And I think I'm optimistic about our plan and how we're approaching spring ball. But I think it's definitely evolving. I think everyone's changed. I mean, look at how spring games have changed so much in the last 5 years versus what they were before. I think that's just a reality of kind of the state of college football right now.
Well said. Last one, and that's back to Fafita here, who is such a unique person and talent, and you see it every day. I've been able to see it a little bit from afar, but he really is a unique person. What's the next step in for him? How does he get to becoming an NFL quarterback? What are the things he needs to do this year to prove that he could be an NFL quarterback?
I think he needs to just keep on the path that he's on, which has really been, constant development throughout the course of his career. I think those, at that position, the more you play, the more snaps you take, they stack, they accrue, right? And that experience I think it's going to help him continue to be a great decision maker, continue to be able to make the throws he needs to make. And I think the one thing about Noah is don't doubt him. Don't doubt that young man. People have been doubting him all his life, and all he does is keep kicking ass every time he steps on the field. And that's why we love him.
Yeah. That block A, man, it's been all over the place. The Final Four, 9 wins for Arizona football. Arizona tennis is on a heater right now. It's they're rocking and rolling in Tucson. Brett Brennan, thank you so much for taking some time for us. Be well. Take care.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. Bear down.
And thank you to Brent Brennan, the Arizona football coach, for joining us in our spring caravan tour. We were able to visit with 14 of the 16 head football coaches in the Big 12. And excited to visit with all 16 of them in just a few months at Media Days. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Still looking downfield, and it's intercepted. Intercepted. Trayden Stukes, first of all, made a great play to pick that one off.
He's successful. Picked up the blitz. Salter's in trouble. The game is really moving too fast for him right now. Stoops again comes through to get him on a loss of 2.
He's got time. His pass to the sideline is intercepted. Trayden Stukes with a purloined pigskin.
Robertson has to check it down. And again, Arizona is there to crunch it. Trayden Stukes leads the defense.
Johnson is hit, and he is dropped. Trayden Stukes was shot out of a cannon.
He's ready to pressure because the safety got him capped. And what's he do? Runs through the back and gets to Avery Johnson.
Sawyer Robertson looking for the lead. Intercepted instead. Trayden Stukes on his senior day.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. It's time now for our full court review, Modelo's Big 12 basketball team recaps. Talking Baylor today as we work our way from the bottom of the Big 12 to the top. We've talked through Utah, Oklahoma State, and now Baylor in the crosshairs here. And John Morris will join us coming up in about 15 minutes. I think with Baylor, you have to start with, it's the first time in 13 years, 13 straight postseason appearances for the Baylor Bears. And it's the first time they've missed the tournament in a long time. That's the standard that Scott Drew has created. They won the national championship in 2021, have been Elite Eight, Final Four contenders for years. 13 straight to the NCAA tournament, and that ended this year with a 16-16 record, 6-12 in the Big 12 overall, the 13 seed in the Big 12 tournament. I think you start with a roster that was built from scratch. The Bears returned 0% of their scoring, rebounding, and assists from the prior season. One of just 3 high major programs, including Miami and Memphis, with 0 returning players between from the 24-25 season. They had some disappointments in their roster churn. You can start with Michael Ratai, certainly at the forefront of that. Also, Obi Agbim, also pretty disappointing. On the other side of that, though, was the emergence of Cameron Carr. Originally a 4-star in the 2023 cycle, Carr spent his first 2 years at Tennessee, making just 14 appearances. He scored at least this year for the Baylor Bears. He emerged in a big way. He scored at least 20 points in 15 games, shot 38.5% from beyond the arc, and he also graded out, according to Evan Mia, as the best defender on Baylor's team. So Cam Carr went from major question mark, former 4-star, to NBA draft pick in one season at Baylor with the development that he had under Scott Drew. And I think with Baylor, you see both the positives and negatives of playing the portal the way that they had to this year with Cameron Carr, but then also the negatives with some of these other guys that really just did not have the years that they had previously. And, just again shows that sometimes you can look at a guy's number on paper. Oh, this guy averaged 19 points a game last year, and look at him in the portal, and he might have 4 stars as a transfer, but until you get him on campus, until you get him with the group, until you get him within your system, you don't really know how they're going to play. They could not even get close to the 18-point scoring they had, or they could, improve on that, or you could have a guy that averaged 5 points a game or didn't play at all that becomes a major contributor for you. I think that's one of the huge takeaways from this past football season and basketball seasons is sometimes you just don't know. I mean, Indiana had a bunch of transfers that weren't rated very highly. Didn't matter. Michigan, same way. I think with Baylor, defense also continues to be an issue. They ranked 268th nationally in points allowed per game. And when you think about the 2021 national championship team, they have not rediscovered any of that defensive magic. But, that was a elite defensive team that Baylor had in 2021. It's why they won a national championship. And every year since then, they just have not been good. I would say got as bad as it's been this past year with that 268th ranked defense. The positives. Scott Drew hit 500 career wins. Did that against Utah on senior night. Quote unquote senior night for Baylor, where, nobody that had played more than a few months at Baylor were represented. But they laid the wood to Utah in that game and at least had some excitement with Drew's 500th career win. They also developed 2 likely NBA draft picks in Cameron Carr and Tunde Yesufu. Carr, again, a guy that, was highly recruited but didn't really ever reach that potential and then turned into a big-time 2A player for Baylor this year. Then Tunde Yesufu, a 5-star who, was at Baylor and had as good of a season as you'd expect for a guy in that vein, and a guy that certainly, is one of the positives of the year for Baylor. Not all of it was positive for Tunde, but certainly a guy that will leave Baylor and go to the NBA, and that says a lot about how they played. I do wonder, too, from an NIL perspective, what's going on in Waco, and certainly something to look into in this offseason. Are they not retaining players because they just don't have a competitive enough NIL? That shouldn't be the case, because it feels like Baylor, is towards the top of the Big 12 in terms of NIL availability and money, and certainly basketball has had a lot of success, so you'd think based on the success they've had, that there'd be more investment in it. I'm not sure, but there's something happening within Waco that's causing this roster flux, because even though last year they didn't return any production, this past year they didn't return any production from the previous year. I mean, that isn't an anomaly. Like, they had a few players back for the previous season, but not many. And it's kind of been like that multiple years. So again, you have to wonder, like, what's deeper, what's going on there deeper that is leading to that? Or is it just, you know, an approach that Drew's had that isn't resonating with these players the way it used to? I'm not sure. I mean, Drew, by all accounts, I mean, he's an incredible coach. He's a great dude. He's extremely genuine. I mean, he used to recruit at a very high level. And, you know, it's really interesting, too, when you look at Baylor deeper, because they really invented the transfer. Not in a literal sense, but, I mean, you look at some of the best teams that Scott Drew has had, and they would bring guys in, they'd sit for a year, they'd get to learn the system, they'd get to know the players, and then they'd come in and become major contributors. So it's sort of interesting how in this new era, NIL and transfer portal, they've not had any success the way that they had success previously. It's a really interesting dynamic, because they were as good as anybody in that category previously. And now they're not good at all. Not good at retaining players, and you know, they, even when they've made the tournament the last few years, they've been one and done. They've just not have teams like in previous years that can make deep runs into the tournament. And a big reason for that is defense, and a big reason their defense hasn't been good is a lack of continuity. It all ties into each other. All right, so what went wrong? We've been through a lot of that. We've been through some of the positives. What went wrong? Michael Rataj, probably the biggest offseason whiff. And maybe this is like they've got the money, they're just not spending it the right way. And you could argue that both Bill Self and Scott Drew are dealing with this to a degree. Michael Rataj spent 3 years at Oregon State. He was their biggest Baylor's marquee offseason addition, other than Tunde Yesufu. And, I mean, he ended basically getting benched by the end of the season. And his minutes were just consistently decreasing over the course of the season. We even talked about Rataj from some of the Evan Mia lineup statistics that, like, he was really bad in any of the lineups he was in with Baylor, and any lineup that didn't have him was significantly better. He finished the year averaging just 7 points per game, which was basically 10 points less on average per game than he averaged at Oregon State. Kind of remarkable. This was a guy that was a 17, 18-point scorer at Oregon State and became a 7-point scorer at Baylor with diminishing returns. Didn't even play at the end of the year. Defense. What went wrong? Defense, obviously. 268th ranked defense. And again, when you look at what they were in 2021 as a national title team that ranked number 2 overall in Ken Palm ratings, I mean, and they were number 1 in defense. I mean, that was an elite defensive foundation, and they just haven't found that magic since. And I think personnel is a big reason for that. In 2025, 2026, the Bears were statistically one of the worst defensive teams in major conference basketball, ranking the bottom third of Division I. Pretty unbelievable. The point guard problem, I'd say this is probably the most underrated problem that Baylor had this past year. Baylor really struggled to the point guard position all season, and that traces directly back to the Robert Wright departure. Drew had essentially no proven lead guard at the start of the year. Isaac Williams emerged, but he went from Texas A&M Corpus Christi transfer, who needed time to adjust to high major competition. Obi Agbim, brought in partly as a scoring guard, had time to adjust to a point guard role in Waco, which was not he was kind of out of position there. And I mean, he was a prolific scorer, and for him to run the point where he's something he's not familiar with was not probably fitting into his strengths. So I mean, I think when you end up 500 total overall and 6-12 in Big 12 play, and you miss the tournament for the first time in 13 seasons, a lot of things go wrong. I'd say, just on the surface, defense looked to be the biggest reason for why things went wrong, but to me it's all related to the same thing, which is having to turn over a roster year over year. 0% of the production was back from the previous year to this year. And so when you've got to go shopping for an entire roster, you're going to have misses. I mean, you're not going to go 12 for 12. So I don't blame Scott Drew for not going 12 for 12 in terms of bringing a new roster in. And you have the right approach, but when things don't work out, there's a domino effect of it, right? If you don't have a point guard, now you've got to put other guys that you didn't anticipate them being point guards or anticipate them playing as many minutes into that. They're thrust into that position now. It's a total domino effect. And I think that's what happened with Baylor, where you plan with certain ways in which your roster is going to look, and then you build schemes on that. And now you're trying to build that chemistry all year, and then you've got things that don't work out, and maybe guys that, hey, you thought they were going to be at this level and they're not for whatever reason, and the domino effect of that in terms of the point guard, what the overall offense will look like, how stagnant it can become at times, and then the defense, forget about it. And at that point, you're focused more on offense and how do we score consistently, because we got to figure that part out. And I think, that just constantly compounds itself, especially against teams that are familiar with one another. You're playing against Arizona, you're playing against the big boys, the Big 12. That's tough. So, I mean, when you look at Baylor for 2027, we'll look ahead to that with John Morris on the way next. This is Big 12 Today. This is our full court review, Modelo's Big 12 basketball team recaps. John Morris, the play-by-play voice of the Baylor Bears, joins us next. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
And we are ready to go. Carr and Obioha, jump it. And a violation is going to be called, I believe, on Baylor on Carr.
Good pass.
Finds the open man. Yesufu can't hit anything, and he's going to hear that from those students behind us. Carr gets an open look and knocks it down. Great start, Baylor team. Shot clock at 4 for Huff. He'll have to watch the front teeth. Another opportunity here for Baylor.
Skillings has been getting hit and hit and hit again, but he stayed with it to get the offensive glass for another possession.
Carr launches a deep three, counted and one.
There is the ball.
In his hands right now, gives it up to Ratai. Back for Carr. Carr with a team high 9 points. Give him 11. Carr trying to stay hot, and he does. 13 for Cam Carr, averaging just under 20. Looking for a stop. Once again, shot clock winding down. Agbem, strong take for two. Remember, he had those quick.
The West Virginia bench asking for some help right here, and they need it.
Baylor lead, 1 minute to go. Lid still on the basket for Huff. Powell spikes it down, picked up by Agben. Yesufu, cherry on top. But it's a big.
In our full court review, Modelo's Big 12 basketball team recaps, talking Baylor Bears basketball with the voice of the Baylor Bears, our friend John Morris. John, how are you? Good morning.
Ari, good morning to you. It's been a while, but thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, it's always fun to visit with you. A little post-mortem Baylor, missing the tournament for the first time in 13 years. What would you say in terms of what went into the bad of this season? What was the reason for it? What do you think the impetus was for this season?
Sure. I think post-mortem's the right term. It was, with Scott Drew, and you just ran the liner with Coach Drew, the bar has been raised so high, the expectation level under Coach Drew and from him, starting with him, is so high that it's just really a letdown when you don't make the NCAA tournament at the very least. And this team didn't do it. To answer your question, remember, this was one of the teams that had 0 returning players, 0 returning minutes, points from last year. So they had to all come together. And I thought all along, Coach Drew's the guy to do that. He can, if anybody can pull a team together, he's the one. And it happened to a certain extent, but it just didn't happen completely, for 40 minutes every night. Like, we played Arizona in Waco and played well. It was one of our best games of the year, really, and lost by 7, 87-80. So that's just sort of where this team was this year. We finished 17-17. And I think that's absolutely appropriate for this team. That's kind of where we were. Some good, some not so good. 500 finish at the end.
Gotta say, I'm a huge fan of the poncho shirt, and I'm really digging yours. I really need I think they only make them for Texas schools, but I need a Kansas version of that shirt.
I'll work on that for you. I got contacts, okay?
I bet you do.
Yeah.
Those guys are out of Austin, right?
That I don't know, but I know Baylor has a deal with them,
Awesome.
And they're great. I mean, let me do a promo for poncho shirts. They are so comfortable.
I have like 7 of them.
Do you really? Yeah,
Yes.
They're great.
You'll catch me wear them quite often here on Big 12 today. But yeah, they're comfy. They're great. I love a good fishing shirt, and they're some free pub for poncho. They do a great job.
Thanks.
And also, I mean, that's for the Masters. You've got a great Masters green on right now.
Well, they sell one like this that doesn't have the BU logo on it, and they call it the Magnolia. So,
nice.
So I'm kind of wearing this is dual purpose. It's Masters Week. I'm wearing the green, but it's also the Baylor logo. So it's perfect for today.
Yes, it is. On the roster piece, I think the thing that I hit on last segment is like, you might hit on some of those guys, but the idea that you're going to go, 12 for 12 or 15 for 15. I mean, that's impossible. You're not going to. Nobody is.
Yeah, and one of the reasons Coach Drew has been so successful through the years is bringing guys in, developing them,
right,
and then by the time they're juniors, seniors, sometimes before that, they're really hitting on a high level, and the chemistry is so good. The best teams Baylor's had, including the national championship team in 2021. The chemistry was so good for those guys. And you think about that team, Davion Mitchell was the defensive player of the year. He came in, he redshirted, and there were others, Mark Vidal. So they were just here, and they were together for a long time. And the way things are now and the way things were this year for Baylor is there's just not that time. You're just going at it, and you got to get ready for the next game. So there's not that time to develop like Coach Drew normally has.
Right. No, I mean, he for all intents and purposes, invented the transfer portal. I mean, some of the most successful Baylor teams were guys that came in, they developed over the course of a year sitting out, and then became huge contributors. I mean, you mentioned Mitchell, but there's so many others. So how does he change that? Like what? Because honestly, I think Bill Self to a degree is dealing with this too. Not that he played the portal like Drew did, but I also think he struggles with putting rosters together through the portal as well. Like, what does Drew have to do here to fix this? Because he was so good at it before, and now is it outside of his control? Like, what do you attribute that to?
Right. I mean, it's just the new game of college basketball. You know, it's the way you got to play the game. And not that he wasn't prepared for it. He was, he was as prepared as anybody. But then we sort of got blindsided. Remember, they had Rob Wright signed to a contract, and Rob should have been here this year. Think about the difference that would have made. No question this would have been an NCAA tournament team. But then Rob, who had already signed a contract, backed out of that and signed with BYU. More power to him. But it just really threw things, I think. When you lose the centerpiece, when you lose your point guard, man, you're all of a sudden, and it happened late. I mean, it happened in April when Rob announced that he was leaving. And then you got to go find a point guard or two. And we found a couple of guys, and they did well. And Isaac Williams developed as the year went on. But he wasn't Rob Wright, and he just and I say that with great respect to Isaac. He got better, and he is now signed to a 2-year contract for the next 2 years. Crazy to talk about these college guys signing a contract, but that's what it is. And I think that's one step forward for Coach Drew and Baylor is you try to lock these guys in as best you can, so you've got something coming back that you can build around. It's not easy, is it? I mean, even if guys are signed, sometimes they're gonna bolt and leave.
Yeah, right. I mean, we've talked a ton about, like, until there's some kind of a CBA.
Yeah.
I mean, these contracts are not enforceable, and it sucks. I mean, to your point, like last year, the portal opened in March, so by the time April rolls around, most of these guys are committed elsewhere. And when you lose an impactful point guard, Drew's hands are tied at that point because who are you going to go get? And
right.
I mean, I agree. I would say the biggest issue from a roster standpoint was the point guard position this year, and it's like, well, there's clearly a reason for it.
That's right. That's true. And it's easy to forget that, when you think about, come on, why was this team 17-17 this year? But it was a big deal. I mean, they brought in Obi Agbum from, Obi came from Wyoming, and Isaac Williams came in from A&M Corpus Christi, and they both did very well, and they fit in. And another thing here at Baylor with Coach Drew is, he's not going to just go get any guys. He's going to get guys that fit with the culture here at Baylor, because the culture that Coach Drew has put together and built is special. It's part of the secret sauce here is Coach Drew's culture. So he's going to find guys that fit that, and that just makes it tough sometimes. Not that they're not out there, but you gotta dig pretty deep sometimes to find them.
Right. Great point. Positives, Scott Drew won his 500th game. He developed 2 draft picks, Cam Carr, who was a 4-star that had disappointed in a couple of years at Tennessee and came in and became the best player at Baylor offensively, defensively. And then Tunde Yesufu. The one thing that we've seen is Baylor consistently add big-time 5-star players, and Yesufu is there too. So I think positives, Scott Drew, 500 wins is incredible. And then Cam Carr's development this year also, I think you could attribute to Scott Drew.
Yeah, very much so. And those are 2 great examples. Tunde, true freshman, set the Baylor freshman scoring record. So that says a lot right there. And I think he'll be gone. I think projections have him as a first-round draft pick. Cam Carr, the projections right now are a second-round pick.
Got it.
And maybe this is me with the Baylor optimism, but I think he could come back. He'll have a decision to make, because first-round draftees, it's guaranteed money. Second round, it's not guaranteed. You can make really good money if you come back, develop whatever you learned from the scouts, and then think where Cam Carr would be this time next year. So, it's not just Baylor, but I think it's not a slam dunk anymore that these guys who could go pro automatically make that decision, because they can stay where they are, develop, and make really good money, and then improve their stock for the next year.
Right. I think you're totally right. And, this is a very good draft class. It might make the most sense for Cam Carr to come back. And to your point, like, if you're not a lottery pick, Cam Carr is worth way more to Baylor than he would be to an NBA team at that point. And so the money is going to be much larger than it will be. And this is something I'm going to be talking about later on the show. But, yeah, that would be – Isaac Williams and Cam Carr back next year would be huge for this team, especially given what happened last year.
Yeah, exactly. And we got, Mo Williams, former player coach. We've got his son coming in, so that'll be fun. I met him when we played down at Houston. So if you can just start with, if you don't have to start at ground zero, right? If you can start with one guy or two guys and then add and build around them, that would be a step forward from where we were this time last year.
What else in terms of that roster construction? I mean, so you mentioned Isaac Williams, the potential for Cam Carr to be back, Mo Williams. Who else you think is back, or what else does it look like in terms of the projection for this roster next season?
The majority of the guys were seniors who came in, and so just one-year guys, so they'll be moving on. I wish we had another year with Caden Powell. He was just terrific. He was our big man and transfer. He's from Waco, Midway High School here, played at Wyoming, then played at Rice. His mom is on staff at the Baylor Law School. And he was just so good to be here, even though it was just 1 year. I wish, and I'm sure they've looked everywhere, every corner possible to find another year for him. But it would be great if we had Caden Powell. He's a 6'9" guy to come back as a big man in the middle, but I don't think it's going to happen. I haven't heard anything along those lines. And James Najee, maybe you heard of him, made some headlines early in the year. I think James is going to go. I think he put his name in the transfer portal. I wish he would stay because he's got so much potential that is just beginning to get tapped. He's got a 7'7" wingspan. Great guy, just fit in with the culture here at Baylor so well. Even with a lot of barbs being thrown his way, he handled it really, really well. But he's gone, I think, also James Najee. So then, other than that, the other guys, were seniors that are moving on. Michael Ratai transferred from Oregon State, and he's gone now. Dan Skilling's transferred here from Cincinnati. He's gone also. So that's kind of where we are for this 1 year fix. There were a lot of seniors. And so Coach Drew and those guys, we don't expect to see them much here during portal season. Yeah. They're pretty busy right now.
Yeah. One of the things, John, I know we've talked about over the years is defense. And, look, the 2021 defense was an all-timer. And it just feels like every year they've slowly gotten worse and worse on the defensive end. And, I mean, that's, to me, a huge problem. Now, with that being said, you have no roster retention. I mean, some of this makes sense, and they're all related, right? Like, no roster retention and no point guard, or inconsistency in terms of the player at point guard. Like, that's probably going to lead to bad defense.
Yes, and it's not that there's any less emphasis on it. Our coaches certainly push that as much as they always have. Ron Sanchez was new to the staff this year. Ron was an assistant to Tony Bennett at Virginia, then was there 1 year as the interim head coach at Virginia, and he was a great addition to the staff. Ron fits in really, really well. I say that to say he was kind of the defensive guy, not that Coach Drew isn't, but that was an area that, that 2021 team, that's a pretty high standard. When you say that's Baylor defense right there, that's a really high standard to meet, but it's the goal, it's the expectation, and hopefully they'll be better in that area along with some others next year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Any final thoughts, John, on this season?
The Crown was good. If you can't make the NCAA tournament, Baylor was in the Crown in Las Vegas, and Baylor was there, and West Virginia was there, and Colorado was there from the Big 12, and it was just a very well-run tournament. Nobody wouldn't take the NCAA tournament over the Crown, but very well run. It's a really good option, first class in every way. Dan Mihalik's their media guy, and he did a great job. So that was a nice option to finish the year. We beat Minnesota and then lost to Oklahoma in the semifinals. Wish we could have made it to the championship. Could have been Baylor and West Virginia in the championship game. But it was just sort of a nice reward for this team to finish the year in some postseason, even though it wasn't the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, well said. The other thing I wanted to ask you about this, really sad news for the Baylor community this week, as the former Baylor women's basketball player Melissa Jones passed away at the age of 36. She was an all-timer, has her number 5 jersey retired to the rafters. When she finished at Baylor in 2011, she was top 10 in multiple categories, including free throw percentage, games played, and steals. What can you tell us about Melissa Jones?
just a bright light. And everybody that knew her and saw her play just loved Melissa Jones. She was such a fan favorite. And it's just so tragic. We don't know any details. She was only 36 years old, but she played basketball here. In fact, in 2011, her senior year, she was the Big 12 Female Sports Person of the Year.
Wow.
So very well recognized, by not just Baylor, but by the league. And then she played a year of volleyball, after Baylor, after basketball, and then worked in our development area for a few years after that. And it was so cool to see her around representing Baylor in that way. So just very sad, and we continue to pray for her family. And we don't know any details, but gosh, to pass it at that young age of 36, it's hit all of us here who knew Melissa really, really hard.
Yeah, well said. 36.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just so young. It's so tragic. John Morris, voice of the Baylor Bears. John, appreciate you, buddy. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care.
You too. We'll work on a poncho for you. We've got a nice green one. If you'd wear a green one, we'd get that to you.
All right, deal. I'll take anything I
right.
get. I'm telling you, my closet's full of ponchos. They're the best. They're great.
They are. Thanks, Ari. Great to see you. Thanks.
You too, bud. Take care. Thank you.
See ya.
John Morris, voice of the Baylor Bears, joining us here on Big 12 Radio, talking through our Big 12 season recap, the full court review, Modelo's Big 12 basketball team recaps, Baylor. We've got Arizona State on Monday. All right, this is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. And on the way next, sort of to what John was just talking about, what we were discussing with Cameron Carr, and that is, Danny Hurley with some truth bombs on early draft declarations and what it means for college sports moving forward. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Second straight game, Mike. Youth is served for the Buffaloes. They are starting 4 freshmen tonight for the second straight game. And here come the Buffaloes on their first offensive possession. Isaiah Johnson, a fantastic freshman in his own right, has the first 2 of the game. Another heralded freshman, Tunde Yesufu, 24 in green. Out to Obi Agdon, and he knocks down the 3 from the top of the key that these youngsters bring to this starting lineup. Speaking of freshmen, that's the first bucket of the game for Tunde Yesufu, a McDonald's All-American last year. Then got Dak, number 8 in white on defense on Powell. Nice bounce pass. The big man to the little man. Isaac Williams, his first 2. The tie saves it to Carr.
Throw it up.
Here's the lob and the conversion by Tunde Yesufu. The players you want to keep on your roster. Johnson lost the handle, a little out of control.
Yesufu made that happen.
The lob to Carr, who dunked it on his own teammate that time.
You're in trouble.
Here's Yesufu.
Oh boy, he's dialed in, Rich. I mean, that's about as smooth.
And if you ask any one of those dudes on that text chain, they say he spends way too much time texting them in the middle of the night. Instead, Obi Agdon's going to just hold the ball and the time will run out. And Scott Drew has career win.
Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, proudly presented by Modelo. I am Ari Temkin. Great to have you with us today and every day here in your home for the Big 12. Big 12 Today on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. A reminder as well that you can check out The Mark of a Fighter with myself and James Westling, separate podcast episodes put together by our producer, David Turner, T-Chains, who's done a fantastic job in putting those together. Search for Mark of a Fighter wherever you get your podcasts or on the TuneIn app and go deeper with both myself and James Westling in terms of our lives and careers and how we got to where we are and some of the advice, some of the struggles and adversity we've dealt with along the way. Check those out. The Mark of a Fighter, those podcasts are live now. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Of course, you can always stream us on Big 12 Studios, the Big 12 Fast Channel, on your Roku device, Amazon Prime Video, DirecTV, YouTube, and plenty more. So go check us out there. Danny Hurley was on the Dan Patrick Show and had some really interesting things to say about staying in college versus going to the NBA and how some of the math really is working in the favor right now of college sports. And so, I mean, here's his first comment. This is clip 3. Here's Danny Hurley on the Dan Patrick Show on the NBA draft and leaving college early.
I would just say with now in college, I would say that unless it absolutely makes total sense for you to go in the draft, unless you know you're going to be a lottery pick or guaranteed to go top 15, top 18, the biggest mistake that you can make right now as a college basketball player is going to the draft too early and not staying long enough in college because of obviously the money situation.
All right, so unless you're going to be a lottery pick, the biggest mistake you could make right now is go to the draft too early and not staying long enough because of the money situation. That's what he said. Here's what he said to Dan Patrick on college basketball being at a crossroads.
And I think we're at a crossroads. I think we've got to decide, what is, who do we want to be? Do we want to try to hold the line and just go retention, high school recruiting, and maybe, cherry pick a need in the portal? Or is this now, are we at a point where it's like wipe the board every year and try to put together the most talented team that you can? We have our first national champion that was comprised of all portals or all transfers in Michigan. Obviously a stud in McKinney off the bench as a high school recruit, but right now we're processing the best way for us to move forward, because you got players on your team that are obviously right now weighing, what they want to do, but also from a program standpoint, you also have all these players that have entered the portal, who are also reaching out for UConn that would like to potentially play here too. So, our players have decisions to make about what they want to do in the future, but we also as a staff have got to decide quickly.
Yeah, so that clip is great because it really focuses in on Hurley describing his approach in the portal, which is, recruit at a really high level, have guys come in and then stay in your system and then fill some of the holes with the transfer portal that you need. And I mean, he referenced losing to a team in Michigan that basically built entirely through the portal. And so you're at a crossroads in terms of trying to figure out how to build rosters. I'd imagine Hurley's going to probably stick with the same approach that's worked. I think he also brought up that it's a two-way street from the standpoint of you got guys entering the portal that are reaching out to UConn. I mean, as much as UConn may be reaching out to specific players, there are a bunch of guys in the portal that are reaching out to them. And I'm sure that's true with a lot of schools, especially those that win or have money. Here's what Danny Hurley said on the Dan Patrick Show on the state of the transfer portal in college sports.
Yeah, this is terrible right now, what's going on. I think we all have to get to a point, and it's not terrible, in a sense of NIL. I think the NIL for the players is awesome. Our players made a lot of money this year, and their commitment level was to the max. So the money didn't make them lazy or hard to coach. They were awesome the whole year. But just, I think as college programs right now, you literally have to have a front office that takes over at this point of the year. To take a coaching staff that now did the 6-month season, and now you've got to flip and now run recruiting visits, put the roster together, talk to the age. I mean, it's a lot. I think college programs we got to start being run like an NBA organization or a pro sports organization.
Yeah, and quite honestly, you're probably too late at this point if you're coming to that realization now. I mean, I'm sure Danny Hurley hasn't, but to speak on it publicly just kind of shed some light on the realities of the situation. He was asked by Dan Patrick specifically about Braylon Mullins, and I thought that might have been the best quote from the entire interview. He said, Braylon Mullins would probably make more money at UConn than as the 15th pick in the NBA. Think about that. That's a lottery pick, right? So Hurley starts off with talking about, like, unless you're guaranteed to be a lottery pick, you're most likely better off coming back to school. But then when he gets to a specific player, he's saying, like, yeah, Braylon Mullins, either he wants to get going to the NBA or come back here and make more money here than he would in the NBA. And this isn't, by the way, unique to college basketball. I mean, when you look at college football, like, some of the numbers that we've heard about are just eye-popping. Jackson Dart, via the 25th pick of the 2025 NFL Draft, signed a deal with the Giants at roughly $4.2 million per season. Sam Levitt and Brendan Sorsby are reportedly set to make twice that much in college next season. Right, Levitt and Sorsby are reported to be getting between $7 and $8 million, perhaps north of $8 million. But think about that. If Jackson Dart would have come back to school, he probably would have made more money coming back to school than he would at $4.2 million in the NFL. Tyler Shuck, $2.7 million. That's what he earns per year based on his rookie wage scale. Darian Mensah, who was at Duke last year, made twice as much of that in college last year. So, specific to the quarterback position, and I'm sure that there's other positions too where this is the case, but you're more likely to make more money in college than you are going to the NFL draft. So we just heard Danny Hurley say that Braylon Mullins would probably make more money at UConn than he would be for being the 15th pick in the NBA draft, and we know that many of these quarterbacks would make more money and significantly more money going back to college. I'm sure there are running backs that would do the same. The value of a running back in college, significantly higher than that from a rookie wage scale standpoint. So it's really interesting in terms of, like, what are guys going to do? And will at some point the NFL and the NBA adjust? You know, because previously any life raft you had as a college player to get into the pros, you were doing it, regardless of if you're going to be a second-round pick or what. Now it makes almost zero sense to leave if you're going to be anything beyond a first-round pick for many of these guys. Now, look, the competitive standpoint, the dream, like, those things are still very real. And I think that's why there's, like, Jackson Dart, right? Like, Dart probably knew that he could have stayed in college, transferred or stayed at Ole Miss and made more money than he was going to make in the NFL draft. But I think from a competitive standpoint, some of these guys, like, just want to gauge where they are and want to prove themselves at that level. They're anxious to do so. And look, ultimately, the real prize here is not in what you get as a draft pick, but what you can potentially earn improving yourself as a draft pick in your second contract, right? Because that's the real golden egg, right? Like, there's no money that these guys can earn on an annual basis in their second contract that would be less, there's no amount of money these guys can earn on an annual basis in college that will be more than what they can get on their second contracts. So, like, the real, and the agents know this, right? Like, the players know this. Like, this contract that you're able to get and earn in these leagues is so much higher. The problem is the immediate math. That's the thing that has these guys thinking. The other thing about this, and Hurley just hit on that in this last clip we heard about, let's just play that beginning again. Clip 5. Let me play the beginning of this clip again.
Yeah, I mean, this is terrible right now, what's going on. I mean, I think we all have to get to a point, and it's not terrible, in a sense of NIL. I think the NIL for the players is awesome. our players made a lot of money this year, and their commitment level was to the max. So the money didn't make them lazy or hard to coach. They were awesome the whole year. But just, like I think as college programs right now, you literally have to have a front office that takes over at this point of the year. Like to take a coaching staff that now did the 6-month season, and now you've got to flip and now run recruiting visits, put the roster together, talk to the agent. I mean, it's a lot. I think college programs we got to start being run like an NBA organization or a pro sports organization.
Right. So he touched on a few things there, talking about how it sucks and it's a horrible system, and it's a common complaint that we've heard from coaches. But I think he touched on it from a different angle. So he hit on, okay, it sucks, but I also don't think that there's diminishing returns in these players and their motivation and their want. And look, Danny Hurley wouldn't mince words there. Like he said it, the money did not change their approach. The money didn't make them hard to coach. But he also brought up the standpoint of how there's a fatigue level for coaches. I mean, they've just been on this 6-7 month grind. I mean, day in and day out, a ton of work. I'm sure Danny Hurley works as assistants like crazy. And then now, you turn around after the season ends, and it's you got to immediately get into recruiting. That's why you need a front office. It's a really interesting dynamic and perspective there. And, it's funny, I on the college basketball subreddit, I saw a thread titled, "The Transfer Portal is Killing My Engagement with College Sports." And it says, title fundamentally says it all. The whole thing feels like such a farce. I appreciate personal freedoms and thus for an athlete to be able to attend and play for the school of their choosing, but the spirit of selecting a school and honoring a commitment and being honored in response feels so unbelievably dead. College athletics are forever changed, like it or not. The transfer portal is killing my engagement with college sports. And what's really interesting about this is this set off alarm bells in my head from the standpoint of I've had so many friends, people, colleagues, texts, family members that say the same thing. Most conversations that I have with people around this are basically the same exact thing. And that is, it sucks. It's awful. It's killing the sport. I hate it. And then the caveat is always, we just heard that from Danny Hurley too. I am happy they're getting paid now. They should be getting paid. But it's the lack of control around the portal that I think is driving people insane. And, I mean, we heard that with John Morris. We're talking Baylor. And as a Kansas alum and fan, you see it where, yeah, I mean, the sport has fundamentally changed. There used to be guys that would come in and develop and get better over 2, 3, 4 years. And it might be hard, and they might have to fight for playing time, but it was worth it. And you could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And these guys would be there for multiple years, and you felt as a fan like you had a level of equity involved with them. I'm bought in more so because I've seen this guy grow for my team over multiple years. And now what we're seeing for a lot of places is a significant amount of roster churn to where I'm only cheering for the name on the front of the jersey. I don't know who you are. I don't know anything about you. I don't know about the adversity you've gone through. I don't know about the adversity you faced. You're just some guy on my team. And, it's hard to disagree with that. And I mean, as a fan and as somebody that covers the sport. And it's so overwhelming. I hear it from everybody. And so that's what, when I saw this thread, my first thought was wow, yeah, this is such a profound, prevailing sentiment that so many people have. And so you wonder two things. One, is it just because we're old? And we lived through an era that was totally different, and this is a new era, and it's hard to get adjusted to it. Taman, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with being old. I think of Hofstra and Preston and Meade. He entered the transfer portal, and he's a freshman. He led Hofstra to their first NCAA tournament in 25 years. Hofstra would love this guy, and if he's gonna be there his sophomore, junior, senior year, he would be a Hofstra legend, just like Speedy Claxton, their head coach, is a legend. But because Hofstra likely can't afford him, we had him for one season, and that's about it.
Right.
I don't think it has anything to do with being old. It's just fans love players. We love the team, but we also fall in love with players. And the fact that whether it's Preston Embiid or it's anyone else, it hurts to see them gone.
Yeah, and I think from the mid-major level, like this is so different for what's happening at the major level. So there's this great example here of all Mountain West performer Kobe Garland. So Kobe Garland started his career at Drake as a freshman. He was a complimentary piece, scored 6 points a game, 2 assists, bench roll. Then he went to Longwood University, and he became not just a contributor but a driving force. He averaged 12 points a game, 4 assists, nearly 47% shooting. He was one of the Big South's best players at Longwood University. Then he went to San Jose State. Right, so for many of these guys, they become mercenaries because, one, they're trying to look for their best opportunity to showcase their talents on the biggest stage, and two, obviously leverage their skill set for monetary gains. And so, I mean, he went from a 12-point scorer that was starting to really boom to going to San Jose State, and I mean, he averaged 20 points a game, 4.6 assists, shot nearly 50% for the field, was all Mountain West, and one of the top scorers in the entire nation. And what happens, right? I mean, he ends up now in the transfer portal. So, I think what happens at that level, the mid-major level, is it's not building a house. It's more running a relay race. And so, I mean, you almost need to figure out, all right, who are the guys, like if you're a coach at that level, if you're a coach like Speedy Claxton or somebody else, like you've got to figure out how I'm running this relay race. Like, who are the guys 2-3 years down the road that will still be here, and then carve out money in order to pay those guys, and then recognize that, like, yeah, you're gonna probably be able to find guys like a Darius Garland or even like a Preston Embiid that they're only going to be there for a year. But if you have the core pieces that you've invested in over multiple years, and then you surround that with the 20-point scorer, a guy that's an absolute stud, knowing that he's probably going to leave after 1 year, like, you can almost, embrace that, lean into that, and then recognize that, like, I've got to spend my time now figuring out who the next Preston Embiid or Kobe Garland is, because that's the reality of it. And I think, look, it does suck, and it's like that at every level. I mean, Flory Badunga, right? I mean, doesn't get much bigger than Kansas, but he entered the portal last year for the same reason he's entered the portal this year. Gauge market value and try to maximize your value. You can't hate him for doing that. It's the price of doing business right now. But the question is, what kind of long-term ramifications does this have? Is this really bad for the sport? Because there's, at this point, no credible evidence that suggests it is, despite all of the complaints about it. Let's get into that next. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo.
And it's broken up. Latrell McCutcheon is a bad dude.
And McCutcheon absolutely changes this ball game.
Levitt thought about taking a shot. Instead, he takes his shot from Latrell McCutcheon. And McCutcheon with bad intentions on that hit on Levitt.
Mack, the second, is playing that defensive end spot. And Buren crushed on the corner blitz. There's Latrell McCutcheon Sr. First sack of the season, and it was a loud one.
Out of an empty set. Murphy finds Wells, can't hold on. And they rule that incomplete. Latrell McCutcheon, who Willie Fritz believes is an NFL player with the PBU.
Well, he is some player, not afraid to make tackles either.
High snap. Welch wrestled down the backfield. That's Latrell McCutcheon, a willing tackler.
You know, he's a guy he only goes about 185 pounds at 6'1".
Another bad snap and exchange, and McClanahan has to run for it. He lost his hat. McCutcheon absolutely changes this ball game.
That's 126 nationally. Awful. Quick toss. Man. Gets popped. The ball is out, and it's out of bounds. Two leaping Cougars defenders, and Latrell McCutcheon and Sione Fotu.
I'm Ari Temkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. James is off today. He's back Monday. Taman Turner, T-Chain's our producer. Doing a great job as always. Anthony Smith, our producer with Big 12 Studios, back at our Raycom Big 12 Studios. We're talking about, something that's been very top of mind for me recently because, I say recently, it's been top of mind for me seemingly for, quite some time now because, a lot of friends of mine, people I know what I do. And so, when they come up to me or when we talk or text, it's a similar sentiment. And I saw a Reddit thread that basically voiced the same sentiment. And it's like, I can imagine just anecdotally, most college sports fans feel this way. And like both things can be true. You can love college sports, and be a huge part of it. Listen to content around college sports. Business has never been better, but yet recognize that like there are some really major issues that are fundamentally wrong with it right now. And that is, the headline from this Reddit subreddit is the transfer portal is killing my engagement with college sports. The transfer portal is killing my engagement with college sports. And I mean, maybe it's worse for basketball because we're basically seeing like 60% of all D1 basketball players in the portal. So I mean, it's fundamentally difficult to engage with the sport in the same way that we used to because, as we've discussed, like I'm a Kansas grad. There used to be guys that when I was at school that were there for 3-4 years and became huge contributors on big-time teams that made deep runs into the tournament, and that you would know, like, the season ends, and you'd know who'd be back. You'd know who is gone, you'd know who'd be back. And there might be a few question marks. Maybe this guy goes for the league, but for the most part, you'd know who'd be back. Now the season ends. They lost to St. John's, and it's like, I have no idea what this roster is going to look like. I mean, there's plenty of guys with eligibility. The whole roster could be back, essentially. We know Peterson's not coming back. But as we've seen, based on some of the decisions being made through these players, like, a lot of them aren't going to be back. And you can't count on them being back. And that's, I think, the sentiment that most have, right? Like, I know I could watch this team, and that I know that by the time the season ends, that I have no idea who's going to be on the roster the next year. So, I wanted to kind of dig into some of the, with the top of the funnel being this idea of, like, I can't engage with college sports the same way. I can't keep track of who's coming and who's going. And, and sort of the ultimate point of like, I've never rooted harder for the name on the front of the jersey than the one on the back because I don't know these guys. I don't know their stories. I don't know the adversity they've fought through. I don't know them. And maybe I can learn their stories, but it's just a constant churn of learning who these guys are and their stories, and there's a fatigue about it. Look, I mean, college sports right now, the way that they're run and functioned is not great and doesn't feel sustainable. And I know it joins a chorus of the same complaints, so I wanted to add a little bit of structure to that. So, I as you go through some of these comments, these posts on this thread, like I think it becomes more and more clear what some of the issues that people have are, and then what some of the fixes could be. But like, you hear the complaints. Man, I don't know who these guys are. It's crazy. It's just turnover roster every year. A friend of mine who's a Texas Tech fan sent me a text last night, basically to this same sentiment. Like, so Tech is losing everybody almost. College basketball is cool. Was the text. It's like, yeah, Kansas is in the same boat, right? And again, like, these are Texas Tech, Kansas. These are big time spenders in the sport, right? So Taman went to Hofstra. They were a tournament team this year. Their best player, Preston Embiid, was a freshman, and he's entered the portal. Totally different dynamic. Embiid is looking to get, to a bigger school, better profile, to make more money. What does Flory Badunga want? What do some of these other guys at Tech want that are entering the portal, right? They want more playing time. They want more money. They want more what? Acclaim? I don't know. It's curious to figure out what their motivation is. Maybe it's just money. Not everybody's motivated by money, but a lot of these guys seem to be, or at least getting themselves to a better situation for money.
And nobody is knocking them for wanting more money. I mean, everybody understands it and gets it. The issue that is out there, and Dan Hurley kind of alluded to this, is for where obviously he's getting overworked. His staff is getting overworked because there's not a front office situation. So you have a tournament team, or excuse me, a championship contending team. They were in the championship, and then Tuesday morning they're already in the transfer portal. There has to be, and from a fan perspective, it's how do you keep fans engaged when we were talking about this during the break? We don't know who these guys are. Michigan won a championship. They're going to remember that team. At least the Michigan fan base will. But the rest of the fan base who aren't fans of Michigan, we're not going to remember them.
No, right. Well, and I mean, that makes this whole thing so difficult. Basically saying, like, yeah, you're going to have your huge roster turnover every year. Basically, you won't really remember the players or know the players unless they win a championship.
And we talk about it all the time in sports. Continuity is a big thing when you're trying to build. We talk about these roster turnovers every single season. How can you really get better when the continuity is one season? What if somebody gets hurt? There's nothing there.
Well, and motivations with them being different across the board. Like Flory Badunga, what's your motivation? Is it just money? You're not going to go anywhere. You can be more high profile than you are at Kansas. You might go somewhere where you could be as high profile, but not anywhere that's on the level in terms of what you'll have from a fan perspective every game. The television, how often you're going to be on prime time, major television, the Big 12, right? Like, you wonder what motivation is.
I would add, too, don't tell me, like, during a press conference that, I love being here. I love Allen Fieldhouse. I love the Kansas fans. When you're going to be gone in a year. I mean, in Flory Badunga's case, I know he could come back, but let's say he leaves. It's like everything that you said to the Kansas fan bases here means absolutely nothing to me.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, and you hear kind of the same tropes every time, right? Like, I love being here. You'll get like the announcement, God's will, right? Like, it's always God's will to transfer. Everybody, it's within God's will for everybody to transfer. And then, the secondary part to that is then the thank you piece, the thank you letter to the university.
Yeah,
thank you
nice
for what you've done.
Media, thank you.
Yeah, like it's just the same formula for every player.
Right.
But here's my question. So we've talked a lot about the ratings for the NCAA tournament. They broke records. Now the context there is that the Nielsen rating system has changed. So, in some ways it's a sleight of hand trick here where now they're measuring more means to watching. Like, bars and streaming numbers, right? Like, so they've added. Previously, they didn't include those. Now they are, so the numbers are going to be inflated. But still, like, people are watching, people are spending money. I mean, you can look at tickets and the numbers associated with, how many fans are there, and some schools are seeing an increase, some are seeing a decrease, right? Like, so there's no like credible evidence right now that says that this is having a negative impact. So like, you have this prevailing sentiment from most people that's really been, I would say, pretty large for multiple years. This is not something just suddenly happened. Like, you've got this feeling, this sentiment from multiple fans. I would say the majority of fans, no matter your age group. And yet there's not, like, is it actually leading to less people watching? Is it, there, like, at this point, we don't have any evidence that suggests it does. However, if you're predicting the future, it feels like it would.
I mean, I think, in terms of the product is still good to watch. I mean, we're watching good teams go up against one another.
Well, and you could argue the product's better.
Right, because
if you've got salaries rivaling
right
what you can make at the next level, then the product is going to be better.
Right. The product is good. I would say, from a mid-major standpoint, you kind of feel a little like where the upsets of a 6 through 14, 15 seed are never going to make a Sweet 16 again. You can make that argument. It feels that way. But again, when you're having a 1 seed and play another 1 or a 2 and a 3 in the Elite 8 or the Final 4, that's pretty good, basketball right there. They're two of the best. I know Arizona, Michigan didn't work out the way we thought it was going to work out, but theoretically, a 1 and a 1, it's going to go down to the wire. And that's why many predicted that game to go to the wire. So it's a good product.
Yeah, and look, I mean, ultimately, to me, the fix is easy here. And we've obviously, like, this has been what we've talked about. Like, you need a collective bargaining agreement. You need structure on deals. Because, like, so much of the issue with the portal right now is negotiating. So are you going to negotiate without knowing what your fair market value is? And how do you gauge fair market value? You have to enter the portal in order to find that out.
And the question is how do you put that together? Because I think it was Jay Billis, said it this week, or it was somebody on that panel at the Final Four said the NCAA doesn't want it.
Does not want it.
They do not want it because the fix is easy, collective bargaining. Okay, let's do it. But they don't want to do it.
They don't want to make the student athletes employees. Maybe there's a workaround in order to create a collective bargaining on student athletes. I don't know. What I do know, though, is the sentiment isn't going away. The transfer portal is killing my engagement with college sports. That's not going away. And though there's no credible evidence that suggests that fans are going away yet, if the long-term projection of this is you've got to make a change that creates more structure on this so that fans have a better sense of who's going to be the roster year over year. And ultimately, like, if you think, oh, we're fine the way it is, and we're going to hopefully hope that Congress at some points enacts laws that makes this thing better, that's much more wishful thinking than what you need. And all we know is the NCAA is so slow to act every time. It almost feels like conferences need to act themselves to do this before the NCAA does, because the NCAA acts too late. And you can't act too late in this situation. You're gone if you act too late in this situation. This sentiment isn't going away. And if the NCAA or whatever conferences or whatever figure that out, like the lifeblood, your future, the future trajectory, the growth is tied into figuring out a way to make the transfer portal make more sense to fans. Because right now, the transfer portal makes 0 sense to fans. It makes more sense to me because I'm in it and it's my job. But most of these fans just want to figure out, how do I know what my roster is going to look like year over year? And there's an easy fix to it. You just hope it's not too late before they figure that out. I'm Ari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Let's talk NBA Draft with Kevin Sweeney from Sports Illustrated. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Introduces himself to Scotty Fox in the backfield.
Horned Frogs show pressure. Kevin Jennings retreating. Bottles up and now goes down to the 5.
Double the red zone. And down he goes. about those active ends and linebackers, huh? Caleb, the alarms are all over the place. This kid can play. Senior from Hayward, California. Option to the wide side counters. Great play. Alarms are again. That young man has just been outstanding all day.
Company, here's Sama. And not much out there. They had the edge sealed, and he's swung down by Alarms Orr. Shut down behind the line of scrimmage.
Harden, the running back. Coming in from Westwood after 3 seasons. Alarms Orr, the tackle behind the line, the TFL.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Let's talk with Kevin Sweeney, college basketball and NBA draft for Sports Illustrated at SI Now, and the recipient of the 2026 U.S. Basketball Writers Association Rising Star Award. Congratulations, Kevin.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me, guys.
There's so much to get with you on, but I wanted to start with a piece you wrote about with coaches, and the headline is, a few years ago, college basketball was facing an identity crisis with many of its big-name coaches retiring Now the new era has begun to establish itself. And, I think like most things, like when you looked at NFL general managers, like there was just a huge difference in terms of what they used to look like versus what they look like today, especially like they got like options traders and, just a different type of skill set that lends itself to general managers in the NFL. And I think the same was true with college basketball, where you had for a long time these long tenured coaches that were really good and they had a skill set, but once the sport evolved, you needed new coaches with new skill sets. And because it's such a competitive environment with lots of money, you're going to get really talented people. So to me, it was always inevitable, even while this was happening and people were complaining about it, but it's good to see it actually play out that way.
Yeah, I think it was inevitable we would have guys emerge as stars. I think the thing that's encouraging is it's not just, oh, Todd Golden's really good at this, and Dan Hurley's really good at this, and Dusty May's really good at this. We have like some real like personalities and storylines that I think will shape the next decade, right? I mean, Dan Hurley is like a perfect kind of heel for college basketball. Either you love him or you hate him, right? Todd Golden is approaching that level. Like he can talk some smack, and people love to go at him. And then obviously Dusty's like Mr. Mild-mannered, but also like the shark of all sharks in the portal. And there's all the accusation about tampering, and is he building rosters in the right way, and things like that, right? So like we have this real, I think this real kind of energy building of like, here are the new faces of the sport. And I think, look, the sport has always been driven by its coaches and their personalities. Like these people become larger than life, especially because rosters change so frequently. Like you follow the teams because, oh wow, like when Kentucky lost, it was that Kentucky lost, but also the Calipari lost, right? And I think we're approaching that point with Hurley, where it's like, oh, UConn lost, but also Dan Hurley lost. I think that's important for the sport long term.
Yeah, it's a great point. And really I think the personality of the coaches, the visibility of the coaches has become even more important now because of roster turnover being the way that it is. Like, you need these coaches to be the face of these programs because otherwise they don't really have anything that resembles a face.
Yeah, 100%, right? And look, I think you can, I think the schools are doing a lot of work to try to, get up to speed and build the brand of their players. I also think, with the money, like you'll see guys stick around. I think about Alex Caravan, who would have been a 2-year college player 5 years ago, is now a 4-year college player. I think Alex Condon at Florida, another example of a guy who would have been a 2 or a 3-year college player who became a 4-year college player, or will become a 4-year college player. I think you'll see examples of that throughout the country, of guys who are a little more comfortable sticking around. And my hope is that even as maybe rosters as a whole flip more, that we have a few more of these recognizable 3 and 4 year superstars that shape a campus for 3 and 4 years and become legendary figures in their program. Those type of guys moving around is not good for the sport, that's for sure.
Yeah, and let's stay on this for a second. I do want to get your thoughts on the NBA draft, but Kevin Sweetie, SI, is joining us here on Big 12 today. One of the things we've been talking about this hour, over the last 30, 45 minutes, is a sentiment that I've heard from tons of friends of mine, colleagues, fans, etc. I'm sure you have too, right? Where people are fans of a college team, they see just insane roster churn, and then there's a subreddit on the college football Reddit which says the transfer portal is killing my engagement with college sports. I feel like this is overwhelming the sentiment from college sports fans. I hate the portal. I don't know what my roster is going to look like year over year, but there doesn't seem to be any credible evidence that suggests that those fans are walking away from the sport. Like, what's your take on this and your thoughts on like the future trajectory of this thing? Because again, I'm sure as you've heard working in this sport, as I have, like there are a ton of people fatigued by this.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because I've always joked that like a big part of college sports, particularly college football, college basketball has this to an extent, but college football like is the off-season national championship, right? Like you get to spend 8 months talking about how we signed the best high school class and we're coming. Like the hypothetical championships we will win in the future are almost as fun as the championships you actually win on the field. And so like there's a segment of a fan base that I think is like that, and there's a segment of the fan base that's like, I loved the fact that I could follow the journey of a player for multiple years.
Yes.
And I do think again, it's important that we find mechanisms in the current landscape to create that. I know Mick Cronin suggested that there be something kind of similar to bird rights in the NBA, which allows you to pay your players more that are returning than guys you would be bringing in from the outside. I think that's a great idea. Again, how that's executed, can you execute that without a CBA, things like that, I don't know. But those are the types of ideas that I think, are interesting and ways that maybe we can incentivize guys to want to, give it a shot. Look, not everyone's going to stay 4 years in one place. At the end of the day, like, there's a lot of reasons to transfer. It's not just about money. But if we can try to level the playing field as much as we can so that guys are making basketball decisions or guys are making football decisions and not just, I can make an extra $200,000 here and then next year I'll bounce because I can make an extra $100,000 there, that's probably a good thing overall for the health of the enterprise.
Yeah, and ultimately, and I'm sure you know this, a lot of guys at the portal just to gauge value, and so the portal numbers are overinflated because of that. Like, some guys may return, they may try to return but realize they made a mistake because they can't return, their roster spot's gone. But a lot of these guys just want to see what they're worth in the open market.
Yeah, no, there's 100% the playing of that game. But, and then you talk to coaches, and, like, coaches are like, look, man, like, you can't pay guys you're retaining like they're free agents. Like, the economy of this breaks if we have to pay the same amount to keep a guy as we would have to go to get a guy. If we're bidding more prices for guys that aren't essentially free agents, like, how does this all work? So again, this is the challenge of the new system, and where I think we need some level of structure, some ability to do multi-year contracts that are enforceable. It doesn't feel like they are right now when people do sign them. Right. But I think that would be a huge step as well, is, all right, like, if you're locked in for 2 years, you have to be here for 2 years.
Yeah, and like, the other thing is, some of these incentives to go to the league have been removed based on the money that's infused. I mean, Danny Hurley on the Dan Patrick Show basically said that that Braylon Mullins would make more money at UConn next year than he would as the 15th pick in the NBA draft.
Yeah, 100%. Now, again, the incentive structure there becomes the question of how confident are you're sticking in the league, and if you do stick in the league,
right,
like that second contract, how early can we get to it, et cetera. And that's where, again, so the line is probably somewhere around the 15th or the 20th pick, where if you're a top 10 or 15 pick, you're probably projected to be a dude in the NBA and someone that's going to get 10, 20, $30 million a year at some point. And if you're a 20th to 40th pick, then the concern is, how do we make sure I get a second contract? And then it's maybe makes more sense to stick around a little bit longer in college and be as ready as you can for the NBA. So someone like Braylon, yeah, like, there's a real conversation of, hey, like, yeah, like, we're turning down a guaranteed, great situation in the NBA, but we'll probably be in as good of a place next year, hopefully better if we shoot the ball better than we did. And we're not going to be poor for the year while we do it. We're gonna make sure you're incentivized accordingly.
Yeah, and to your point, like, the dynamic isn't necessarily how much money I'm going to make next year in the NBA versus college. It's starting the clock to get to that second contract, because the second contracts, that's where the real money is, and that's true for the NFL and the NBA.
Yeah, 1,000%. And yeah, again, that is the real question. Can you got to make sure you're going to be good enough to get the second contract. And I think a lot of guys mistakenly turned pro too early when there wasn't a ton of money on the table in college, because they thought, well, I got to get to the league, and like, they set themselves up to fail because they spend the first 2 years of their 3-year contract playing in the G League 90% of the time, and then when it comes time for extension talk, they're like, oh no, like, no way, and then you're a free agent at 22 years old. You don't know what to do.
Yeah. I'm talking with Kevin Sweeney here from SI. Now that some of the hysteria has died down, what's your take, and what have you heard from scouts about Darren Peterson at number 1?
Yeah, I think he has a real chance. Obviously, I think the medicals at the combine will be critical for him, and teams will want to see, is there any long-term concern that we're dealing with here? There's no question that even down the stretch when he was playing full minutes, and it was encouraging to see him do that, that he was not himself. Like, athletically, he just lacked the pop that he has always played with, and I think if teams believe he'll have that back, he's going to be a very strong contender right there with AJ DeBonsa for the top spot, and then I think it becomes kind of a fit and positional value proposition. But yeah, if the medicals pop up as concerning, it'll certainly strengthen AJ's case. I'd be shocked if someone else jumped both of them and wound up number 1, but right now, yeah, I think it's a close to 50-50 two-horse race.
I'm going to ask you a question that I'm constantly asked by my 10-year-old. Who's going to be the 4th pick in this draft?
It's a good question. I would say, I think Caleb Wilson is probably number 4 on most people's boards. Again, now how things shake with the lottery and all that, we'll see. But I think Wilson right below. I think there's a world where Boozer could get jumped by one of Wilson, Acuff, Wagler, or someone like that. But I would guess that Boozer goes 3, and then Wilson, I think, is the consensus 4th best player. But again, positionally, things start to get interesting once the lottery happens.
On Wagler, as a Kansas fan, and my co-host who's not in today is a K-State fan, How does Wagler happen?
I mean, it really is one of the most remarkable stories I can remember. And it's funny because I think the narrative is, well, no one ever watched Keaton play. And obviously he played off circuit at AAU, so it's not, he wasn't playing in front of 50 high major coaches every game, but like lots of high major coaches watched him and didn't recruit him. Notre Dame, Xavier, Butler, I can go down the list. I've 10, 15 schools that watched him play because he was playing against really good players, or saw him in high school because he played with Ethan Taylor, who's going to Michigan State, who's one of the best centers in the country in the 2026 class. Like, people watched Keaton and they didn't quite put it all together. It's really a story more of momentum and like how flawed the recruiting process is. At the end of the day, Keaton didn't get offers from like the great mid-plus schools, the Colorado States, the Drakes, the Murray States, etc., until it was too late. And if those schools had jumped in and offered him in June, then every high major goes and sees him in July, and they see him dominate in July, and it's a line out the door for Keaton Wagler. And instead, they waited to offer until July. The high majors don't watch him in July. They keep him on the radar, but they don't pull the trigger. And it takes Illinois, who has a great relationship in the state of Kansas because of Brad Underwood, and them believing in his film more than anything. They didn't go see him in AAU. They just watched his film and believed and went and visited him and really liked him. And so, yeah, it's a remarkable rise, and the fact that he'll be a top 10 pick is just crazy to think about.
Yeah, it really is. And I look at Bill Self historically. Ochai Agbaji was under-recruited, coming out of the Kansas City area. DeJuan Harris was a 0-star coming out of Columbia, Missouri. It still just boggles my mind that Self missed this guy because, again, he's even at Kansas where you get access to the best players in the country. He's recruited guys that were not being recruited by other big-time programs.
Yeah, 1,000%. Look, I think the thing that was tricky with Keaton was, I think, because of his frame, a lot of people viewed him as a developmental project. Yeah. And in this era, right, if you're sitting there as the head coach of Kansas, you
don't have time for that.
Right, yeah, maybe Ochai Agbaji doesn't go to Kansas because they say, oh, well, it's going to take a couple years, or DeJuan Harris is going to take a couple years, right? We don't why are we going to spend 2 years of our lives developing this guy for him to leave and go transfer to Murray State because he didn't play at Kansas, right? That's the question now, and I think that held a lot of people back from recruiting Keaton, who was 165 pounds soaking wet when he showed up in Champaign.
A great point. But man, did he have an incredible year? And yeah, as you said, turned into a top 10 pick, maybe even top 5. We'll see. Kevin Sweeney, college basketball NBA draft staff writer for SI. Thanks for your time, man. Appreciate it very much, and congratulations again on the award.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Kevin Sweeney, great insight there from Kevin Sweeney, writes college basketball and NBA draft for SI, does a great job. Great stuff there. All right, Big 12 today, Big 12 radio, presented by Modelo. There's a lot going on in the baseball diamond in the Big 12. Some big-time surprises. Arizona baseball, huge surprise. Arizona State baseball, I should say, huge surprise. And they've got maybe the best hitter in the nation right now. We'll get into that. Plus, Kansas is also killing it. This may be Kansas's best team of all the sports, Kansas baseball. Jamie Plunkett from Horned Frog Blitz and now Base 12 Sports joins us to take us around the bases in the Big 12. It's Big 12 today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Malachi Lawrence ends that drive for K-State. He is swallowed up behind the line of scrimmage. Malachi Lawrence, a loss of 2, and third down and long, trouble on the edge, and they go back-to-back. This one belongs to Malachi Lawrence. Johnson on a 4th and 6. Scans. Backpedaling. Going the opposite way. Now he curls around the edge. In pursuit, UCF gets to him. Malachi Lawrence, one of their 2 vaunted pass rushers on the edge, ends that drive for K-State.
He's got our antennas up. And the antenna goes down. Malachi Lawrence again. This time, his first sack of the season.
That's just absolute force right there by Malachi Lawrence.
It's a play if you're UCF. Here's Pryor, and he is swallowed up behind the line of scrimmage. Malachi Lawrence, a loss of 2, and before the quarter break. Fox leaves the pocket to the numbers and track down.
Malachi Lawrence finishes 3 here in Orlando with his UCF 9th.
Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Excited to catch up with our next guest, Jamie Plunkett, who has done a great job over the years of covering TCU, and now he's knee-deep in Big 12 baseball with Base 12 Sports. I would encourage everybody to check out the email chain as well as the coverage for Big 12 baseball that Jamie's got. Jamie, how are you?
Ari, I'm doing great, man. It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, you too, bud. Let's start with Landon Hairston. Dude is just incredible. If we're looking Big 12 baseball big picture, Arizona State baseball is a huge surprise story this year, and Landon Hairston is just killing the ball right now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when you've got a guy at Barry Bonds' alma mater who's hitting almost as many home runs per plate appearance as Barry Bonds did. I hope that puts into perspective for people the type of season that Landon Harrison is having, because it is not normal what that kid is doing for the Sun Devils this year. The way he's hitting the ball, the fact that he's doing it from the top of a lineup, playing really good defense on top of it to boot. He is the straw that stirs the drink for Arizona State, and that's saying something considering that Arizona State has one of the best offenses in the Big 12.
Yeah, he's their leadoff hitter.
Yeah.
Like what?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally you want leadoff hitter to be a guy that sets the table, that gets on base, can steal bases, and he could do that. But is it more just like getting him as many bats as they possibly can? Is that why he's there?
Well, that's certainly part of it. And you look at the rest of the lineup though, and you bring in a guy like Dean Toigo, who's hitting the ball incredibly well. New Contradas is back for another year, hitting the ball incredibly well. Dominic Smaldino is another guy that's hitting really well. When you have the depth that Arizona State has in their lineup, you can afford to put your best hitter at the top of the order to give him that many at bats like you were talking about, and you know that the guys behind him are going to continue to produce. I think Willie Bloomquist has done a great job putting this lineup together. And when you have a guy like Landon Harrison that you can afford to put in that one spot, it says a lot about the roster construction overall, the way they've gone about building that team. And I hope that they can start, to continue to put these wins together on the weekend, because I would love to see what Arizona State can do in postseason play once they get beyond the Big 12.
Yeah, well said. You look at the top of the standings, you're like, huh? What? UCF 10-2, Kansas at 9-3. Coming into the year, I think West Virginia was the favorite. TCU's always there. Texas Tech, in terms of sustainable programs in this conference. UCF had a series win at West Virginia. Kansas is just killing it right now. They went to Nebraska and got a win midweek. Now they will host UCF. So a huge weekend series started this weekend with UCF and Kansas. But how on earth are UCF and Kansas at the top of the Big 12 standings right now?
Well, UCF's done nothing but earn it at this point. Going on the road, like you said, with that series win over West Virginia, also a road series win at TCU. They swept Oklahoma State to start Big 12 play. They've swept Arizona. I know the Wildcats aren't what many people expected them to be, but that's still a really good series win. And they're doing it with a balance that I haven't seen from UCF in quite a while. Rich Wallace has done a great job of building up depth in this program in his third year at the helm. And what we're seeing is a pitching staff that's able to sustain despite losing Braden Smith in the first inning last week, despite not having Matt Saucer the past 2 weekends. Guys like Mateo Gray are stepping up. Camden Wicker has been awesome on Sundays. And then a lineup that is powered by Andrew Williamson, but also guys that just get on base. John Smith is having a great season. Jacobs, their second baseman, since he's come back, has been really productive for them. They're not a team whose numbers are going to jump off the page at you, but they're just consistently very good. And in a Big 12 where the margins are pretty thin, if you can be consistently very good at pretty much everything, you're going to win a lot of baseball games. And we're seeing that from UCF this year.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Kansas has won 5 straight. They're hosting UCF. As a Kansas alum and fan, it's you take this success with a grain of salt, because you know that you're not going to probably keep your coach long term, because he's incredible and has been since coming in Fitzgerald. So preview the series for us. It's the 2 best teams in the Big 12 right now. Huge surprise, in Lawrence. Give us a sense here of how you think this goes.
First of all, Fitz just signed an extension this offseason, so I wouldn't be too doom and gloom if I was a Kansas
fan. All right,
fan.
okay, all right.
He's locked in for a little while.
I'm afraid of an SEC opening, Jamie. You and I both.
That's fair. Look, everybody should be, right? That's just kind of the way things go across sports these days. But,
right.
I think for the Jayhawks, one of the things that I've really liked since they've started Big 12 play is the way they're barreling up the baseball. I had a chance to catch up with Fitz when he was in Fort Worth in that midweek game against TCU the week before conference play started. And he said he needed to see 2 things from his team. It was hitting the ball hard more consistently, which they've done an incredible job of doing. Tyson LeBlanc has been one of the hottest hitters in the Big 12 since conference play started. And then also see their pitchers give them a little bit more length. We've seen that from Matisse Nayrall, who's getting the Friday start this week. We've seen that from Don Vogley, who's got shifted to Sundays for a little while, is going to be the starter on Saturday this weekend. If they can continue to do those 2 things, get length from the starting rotation and hit the ball hard, it sounds overly simplistic, but that's a really great recipe for winning a lot of baseball games. And if you're Kansas and you get UCF at home, with potentially their two best arms on the shelf this weekend, that's a really big opportunity for the Jayhawks to make their own kind of statement and take a win in the series against the Knights. I have Kansas winning this series. I think it's going to be incredibly close. These are two teams that are playing some of the best baseball in the conference, but I do think the Jayhawks get it done at home this weekend.
How many teams do you think make the NCAA tournament out of the Big 12?
Right now, I think 7 is kind of the number that I'm looking for when you think UCF, Kansas, TCU is catching some momentum, so I think they're in a good spot right now. West Virginia, obviously, despite losing the series last weekend to UCF, there's your top 4. You've got Arizona State, Kansas State, and I think Baylor is maybe the surprise of the league this year with the way they're playing. They've got a competent pitching staff on the starting front. They've got a big 3 in their lineup that has been hitting the ball really, really well, including freshman Brady Janusek, who I think should be a candidate for freshman of the year in the Big 12. So you get to 7 right there, and then there's a possibility if Cincinnati turns it around that they maybe can sneak in there as an at-large bid, one of the Final 4 in or something like that. I think it's a pretty deep league this year, and I could see at least 7 teams getting in.
Yeah, and especially again, you look at like the consistent programs within this conference in baseball. Historically, TCU, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and they're further down the standings than you're used to seeing, and you figure that's maybe the line of demarcation. It's really interesting. I mean, Texas Tech, Tim Tadlock, they weren't very good last year. They're not off to a great start this year relative to their standard. I mean, this is a team that's churned out MLB players and a consistent presence in the NCAA tournament. Tech is spending money everywhere. They're not spending money in baseball. What's going on there?
That's the sense that I get, is that maybe hasn't been the same amount of investment in baseball as we've seen in football, basketball, softball. But that's not to say that they don't have talent either. I mean, they've got an incredible freshman shortstop in Lincoln Garcia, an outfielder in Logan Hughes, who's one of the top draft prospects in the Big 12. They have a ton of talent on the offensive side and the defensive side of the baseball, but pitching-wise just has not been where it needs to be for Texas Tech to be competitive. And it's interesting because we're talking about a Big 12 where the pitching staffs across the board aren't necessarily elite. They're all capable and very good, but Texas Tech just hasn't been able to even get to that point with their pitching staff, and that's holding them back. I mean, if you look at their offensive numbers, they're some of the best in the country as far as batting average, hits, all these kind of counting stats go. Texas Tech is up there with the best of them, but the arms, I think, have really let them down this year. I don't know if that's an investment thing or a roster construction thing, a retention issue maybe, because they have had a lot of guys transfer out the last few years. But whatever it is, I mean, we've seen Tim Tadlock get teams to Omaha. We know what he is capable of as a head coach when he has the team to do it. I just wonder if maybe he needs a little bit more support from folks around him to get that done again.
We talked about Landon Hairston, Kansas and UCF surprise stories. Like, what's maybe the biggest story in Big 12 baseball so far that nobody's talking about?
That's a great question. I'm going to split my answer here, and I'm going to start with D. Kennedy at Kansas State, because I think he's been one of the most entertaining hitters in college baseball this year that isn't getting talked about. And part of that is because, Kansas State maybe hasn't put together the record that people have expected in conference play. They just lost a home series to TCU this past weekend, but he is arguably the best draft prospect in the Big 12 this season. And that's talking about a draft class that includes guys like Sawyer Stroh-Snyder, Brady Ballinger, a couple of really powerful arms as well. But D. Kennedy has turned into a very complete player, an excellent defensive shortstop. He's hitting the cover off the ball this year. He's getting on base at an incredible rate. And I hope people start to talk about D. Kennedy more because he deserves it. He's an incredible player. The other side of things is Quentin Coates. I mean, got tabbed as the boogeyman of baseball this year up at Cincinnati. Their big first baseman, who is kind of antithetical to the way Jordan Bischel likes to play baseball. He's more of a small ball guy, advance, be really, really fundamentally sound. And then you just roll Quentin Coates out there, and he's like, I'm just going to hit 20 to 25 home runs this year for you guys, and we can figure out the rest of it later. An incredible power bat in the middle of that lineup has really sparked Cincinnati at times where the rest of the offense was struggling. He's been quiet the last few weeks. I'd like to see him picking back up again this weekend. They have a pretty big weekend as well, hosting Baylor. And so if he can get going, get the Cincinnati lineup going again, I think that would really be great for the Bearcats. But those are two storylines that I think people should pay more attention to, or just the seasons that D. Kennedy and Quentin Coates are having.
That's awesome. What about some of the arms to know about? We've talked a lot about the hitting. What about some of the best pitchers right now in the Big 12?
I think it starts with Cole Carlone over at Arizona State. He's been phenomenal for the Sun Devils on Friday nights this year. I had questions this offseason about what he was going to look like in a starting role. He was such a great closer, a dynamic back of the bullpen kind of guy for Arizona State last year, and he's just been phenomenal on the mound in those Friday night starts. I think he's been incredible. Maxiel is another guy at West Virginia who's been excellent this season. He's moving into that Saturday role now instead of Sundays for West Virginia. We'll see how that maybe helps their pitching rotation a little bit. You've got guys like Ethan Calder at Baylor who have been really solid. Lincoln Sheffield up at Kansas State, that's been great. Zach James at TCU has been a guy that's put two really quality starts together over the past couple of weekends. He's earned a weekend rotation spot as well. The pitching is there in spots for TC or for the Big 12. Nate Taylor, another guy at Cincinnati. It's there in sparks, but I think one of the questions about the Big 12 going forward is how can you maybe build up your pitching staffs a little bit more? We've seen a lot of run-heavy games in conference play this year, and part of that is because of the talent at the plate across the league, but a part of that is the depth maybe isn't quite there on the pitching staff side of things for most of these teams as well.
Where can people check out your work and support what you're doing at Base 12?
Yeah, base12sports.substack.com is where all my written content goes. We do 4 posts a week directly into your inbox with recaps and analytics and title odds and all the other good stuff that just covering the Big 12 like nobody else is in the country, really. And then you can check out my show as well that I host with Noah Darling called The Flyover League. It's a podcast that we drop every Tuesday morning just talking about Big 12 baseball. So that's where you can catch it all.
Awesome. Yeah, check out that podcast, The Flyover League, and check out Base 12. And the Substack there where you'll find Jamie Plunkett's great work. You're right. There's nobody covering Big 12 baseball. There's very few outlets covering college baseball. D1 Baseball does a good job, Baseball America, but it's great to have somebody specifically covering Big 12 baseball because it's an emerging league with great teams, great coaches, great players, but not as much coverage. So cheers to you, and we're excited to have you on every Friday.
Happy to do it, Ari. And like you said, yeah, the Big 12 deserves it. It's got blue bloods just like every other league, and they deserve to be covered.
Yeah, thank you. Jamie Plunkett joining us here. Check out Base 12. Check out the Flyover League, the podcast that he does with Noah Darling, focused specifically on Big 12 baseball. I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Coming up next, the biggest topics in sports and the world that could have been an email. It's Big 12 Today.
Backside pressure. Flores felt it, and he's brought down by Jackie Marshall.
Quarterback draw. And Crittenton runs into a wall. Jackie Marshall.
All the two defensive tackles in the middle really do work. Number 0, Jackie Marshall. The quickness and aggressiveness right there to disengage from that block and get that tackle for loss.
Third down and 7. Middle run. That had the look of a 4-down play sequence. We'll see if they are going for 4 down below the 35 of Baylor.
Baylor's defense has been able to do. Love it. Blitz coming. It could have been worse. Jackie Marshall finally will get credit for the sack.
Jackie Marshall, just watch him, not truly rushing, right? Kind of just waiting to see what he does. He corrals him, grabs that right leg and puts him to the ground.
Little play action. Hoover eyes downfield. The dump at the last moment to Rodgers.
He's got himself a ball game, even if he plays going that third down, really does
Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. The biggest stories in sports and the world that could have been an email. Some stories needed breaking news banners. These needed a reply all. And I'll start today with Donald Trump's executive order on college sports. Man, I've seen a lot written and discussed about this for something that, as we talked about, has really no implication whatsoever on the enterprise. For starters, an executive order basically is directing government agencies, and since the NCAA does not operate under the auspices of the government, they're sort of not under that purview. And even if you argued, as Trump is, that they will withhold funding, we're talking not about the academic side of things, we're talking about the athletic side of things, which at this point are basically separate businesses and entities. I mean, Kentucky Sports LLC is its own spinoff from the university. It's a completely separate entity. These are self-sustained businesses. So you don't have the purview to do it. And even within the executive order, it's written that, we may not have legally speaking, we may not have the authority to do this, but we're trying to do this anyways. I mean, I get that Trump is trying to create some momentum for Congress to pass laws to help govern all of the stuff we've talked about, but that ain't it.
I mean, I've said many, many times that an executive order is just a mirage to look like they're doing something when they're really not doing anything.
Yeah, it's to look like you care and you're trying. Right, yeah, exactly. It's to make it seem like he's doing something to help move it forward. And then, if it does, that he can take responsibility for it, claim responsibility for it. The executive order could have been an email. You could have seen the executive order in the email. You could have seen the verbiage within there that basically said, we may not have the jurisdiction to do this, but we're still going to do it anyway. And recognized, again, the irony of the fact that, the opinions in a 9-0 Supreme Court ruling were written by 3 justices that were all appointed to the Supreme Court by President Donald Trump. So he's basically trying to invalidate the opinion, overwhelming opinion of multiple Supreme Court justices that he himself nominated to the Supreme Court. You can't make this stuff up. Talking about things that could have been an email today. Way too early top 25s in college basketball. That could be an email. It probably actually could be like a Post-it that's left on the refrigerator. It's a fool's errand. How do you know what any of these rosters are going to look like? I mean, you have literally 50%, at least 50% of Division I players in the portal right now. Half of all D1 players are in the portal. How are you coming up with the top 25? I get the way too early college basketball top 25s from 5 to 10 years ago. That makes a lot more sense. Then you'd have a pretty good sense and gauge of who'd be back. But, now you don't? And maybe it's just blind faith. Kansas I've seen at the top 25. How do you know? Just based on history? You have no idea who's going to be on their roster.
It's a hard sell.
Yeah.
Very hard sell. One of my, this could have been an email thing. So I told you about this last week, Ari and Indy, about the whole Gino Auriemma, Don Staley spat that has been going on.
Yeah.
What I don't like is everyone's opinion on it. At Candace Parker, and sure, I might have a little UConn bias, I'll be honest, but Candace Parker has done 3 different interviews on this. She went to Tennessee. Pat Summitt and Gino Auriemma were rivals. I don't expect Candace Parker to say
have a pro Gino.
Yeah. So her statements on X that she keeps posting, that she keeps bringing out, could have been an email. I get it. You don't like Gino Auriemma. It's very well aware. I don't think you like him now. I don't think you liked him when you were at Tennessee when Pat Summitt was there. I get the point.
And to your point, it feels like the only time that women's college basketball is getting major headlines in sports is related to Gino Auriemma. And yeah, I mean, look, is he mad? Is Dawn Staley mad? The email could have just basically been team loses game, coach is mad.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I mean, that's it. That's what happened. His team lost. He's upset. He's mad. He lashes out. Guess what? Dawn Staley's team lost the next round. Got absolutely destroyed by UCLA in the national title game.
Yes.
Do we even know what he was yelling about?
They said it was the pre-game formal handshake that Gino Auriemma said that Don Staley, well, he alluded that Don Staley left him waiting for like 3 or 4 minutes. And Don Staley, it was really pettiness. Listen, I said it from the get-go. I think I told you this at the Final Four, that I think that you have two very competitive, great future Hall of Fame head coaches who don't like each other.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
They're both alphas, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's funny about that, and this, again, very much could have been an email. Coach loses game, gets upset.
Yeah.
That's the headline. That's all you need to know. And that, like, it didn't matter the reason. He was ticked off at her because he's always mad at her, in the same way that I'm sure Don's always mad at Gino. And so, like, the only thing that matters here is the outcome of the game.
Right. They have both won a championship against one another. UConn beat UCLA in 2025. They play again a year later in the Final Four. It's not bad blood in the sense that I don't like you personally. It's competitive bad blood that these two have gone up against one another, and one of the teams lost, and the coach got mad. End the story.
This probably could have been an email every week, but it never ceases to stop being funny to me how much, when there's like tweaks or changes made to any social media platforms, how outraged people get about those tweaks and changes. And like, oh, this will be the end of this platform. This will never come back from this.
Oh, well.
Yeah, no, they're doing just fine.
See you next Monday on the same platform.
Like, any week, any day, there's changes made. There's constantly changes and updates. Like, when you look back at the last 10 years and you see how foreign it'll look, like, you get used to these features again. Don't worry. Don't you worry your pretty little head. Like, you'll get used to it, and over time, you'll then get mad about the new features that take away from the old features that you didn't like at first, but then you ended up liking. I'll tell you another one that could have been an email is, there we go. There's some music. I like this. This is great. Player X is getting X to transfer. That's another one that could have been an email. So obviously when the portal's open, you get players that are transferring, and then there's just like an absurd amount of money that's thrown out there for the player to transfer, and it feels like more and more times than not that's actually not an accurate number, but it doesn't matter because it's already out there, and then people run with it and take it. And it's like this huge, overwhelming complaint from people about like, oh, see, this is why college sports is so terrible. Did you see what's his name's getting $10 million? And like, no, I didn't. They are? Yes. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, that's crazy. It's like, but they're not. But the story's already taken on a life form of its own.
Like, in addition to that, I saw a bunch of posts that said, 2,200 players have entered the transfer portal. And then the guy who started that, it literally says, if you go on his X account, I am a satire account.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah, I didn't have the heart to bring it up to James when he mentioned that, when he referenced that Twitter account.
Yeah.
But, like, and with some of them, even if they don't acknowledge they're a satire or, like, planting news, like, that will eventually be true. There may not have been 2,200 or 3,000 players in the portal when that was tweeted, but it might be true today, a week later.
Give it time.
So, yeah, it's almost like guessing and then being early on it and then claiming responsibility for it, even though you had inaccurate information and you just guessed.
You knew you would be right at some point, but you put it out there when it wasn't right, but nobody cares.
But again, like I keep seeing this with different players in terms of the rumors of money being associated with those players, and it's like, that person has no idea.
Yeah.
And you routinely hear from the universities, from people that know, associated with collectives or whatever, that like, yeah, that the numbers being reported are so off. So it just feels like any of these numbers being reported on transfer portal could have been an email. Any of them.
Hey, no, I agree, because we don't know. So why put something out there that we don't know?
Well, it sets false narratives.
That too.
And not to say like there aren't outrageous numbers that some of these players are getting, and in some cases they may actually be getting more money than what's being reported.
Could have been an email.
Definitely could have been. Spring game overreaction season is here. Could have been an email, for sure. you know, and it's funny because we're about to hit this with NFL offseason OTAs. Same deal. It's basically like just overreacting to the only football we've seen since the end of the football season. And yet, we have to recognize that, like, this is all part of the process of building a team. So, like, there aren't major takeaways because this is just one step in the process. You go through spring ball, you're getting ready to get in shape, you're getting in shape. For some guys, they're learning a new offense. For other guys, you're trying to build within the same offense or defense you've been in. Like, it's just part of the process.
Right.
And then you get to fall camp. And, like, now is when the real competition ratchets up. And I'm sure there are some coaches that may have some takeaways that you never saw from spring camp that aren't being reported or written about, or takeaways that they then bring into those competitions they're trying to solve. Like, there's so much subtext that reacting to anything you see is so false. It's, like, and you learn that more and more over the years. Like, the things you see are by design. The things they show you are by design. It's things you don't see behind the scenes that really lead to the big picture stuff that you're trying to, like, depth chart finalization, starter, non-starter, jobs want, like that kind of stuff.
In other words, like translation, if you see or hear something about an OTAs, don't have that be the foregone conclusion for how your team will play come the fall.
In fact, in most cases, it's the opposite.
Right.
Or it's like smoke signals. It's not really telling you anything.
Right. It's just enjoy that football, that it is a small preview that football is back.
Enjoy it for what it is.
Right.
Actual football being played since the first time in multiple months.
Right. Since January.
Which is why, like, could have been an email.
Which, yeah, absolutely. I'm actually glad that you brought up OTAs, because OTAs and minicamp and training camp, not only for college, but particularly for the NFL, and I'm a Cowboys fan, I can't wait because Jerry Jones will make millions of statements that will be emails. That could have been emails.
Oh, yeah. Jerry's the king of this segment.
Oh, yeah.
This is Jerry's domain.
Yes. He will say something, and it'll mean absolutely nothing. It'll be a large bit of nothing.
Whole bunch of nothing.
Yep.
Got any other stories that could have been emails?
Not off the top.
Okay, cool. Sweet. Yeah, that's... Oh, the last one for me is the Mike Vrabel, Diana Rossini story.
Yes.
Oh, my God. The amount of stories and tweets and pictures, and it's overwhelming. And I'm at the point now where I feel really bad for Diana Rossini. Like, her career will never be the same, and maybe that's the justice she deserves. I don't know, but like the email could have been pictures. Like, here they are on this romantic getaway. They're both married. This is kind of weird. I don't need, like, deep dives into this, and, like, the amount of videos I've now seen uncovering Diana Rossini interviews she's done where she rips her husband, and then, like, comments from the husband that aren't even real. This story has so jumped the shark, and it's such a great example of the world in 2026.
That we're so involved in high-profile people, public people, celebrities, private lives when we shouldn't be.
Yeah, I'm not married to Diana Rossini.
Yeah.
I would if this were my wife, I'd have questions.
Sure.
But yeah, like, I'm not married to Mike Vrabel or Diana Rossini.
Right.
Like, I'm not concerned with if they're hooking up.
This is a top-tier story.
Not only that, but just the amount of, like, sub-stories and videos, it's jumped the shark in a big way. And it is the perfect encapsulation of the story in 2026. I feel bad for both of them to a degree.
I have one more story, actually, that could have been an email. Anthony Davis, that guy, he was on Draymond Green's podcast, and he was letting the world know how he got traded to the Mavericks.
Yes.
And he was like, he thought he was being traded to go play with Luka. And he thought that, he was like, who did they give up? And he found out it was Luka, and he was like, oh. And then Nico Harrison was like, hey, I told you I was going to get you, man. Hearing that ticked me off. It's just like, send it in the email so I can see Anthony Davis comments on Nico Harrison's trade to the Mavs. I don't need to know what was actually said. I'm over it. I'm trying to get over it. I was mad about it.
Yeah, no, I would say the email doesn't need to be sent. This is one of those you could just keep and unsent.
Take it to the grave.
Like, at this point, we've heard enough about the story behind the story, and I'm not even a Mavs fan, but like I'm so fatigued by it. Like, yeah, there's really no sensical reason for why Luka was traded other than, hey, trade Luka, and then we'll give you the first pick for the next draft. Cool.
Ding, ding, ding.
All good. All right, thanks to Taylor Turner, our great producer, for a great week of shows. Thanks to Anthony Smith, our great producer with Big 12 Studios, for a great week of show. Thanks to James Westling, who's back on Monday. I'm Ari Tepkin. This has been Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Have a great weekend. We're back Monday, but for now, we're out. Peace.